Hello, and we are back once again. This is the second episode of the Smol Bear Show. Your host, Alex S. Johnson. I'm the founder of Nocturnicorn Books. We're a boutique literary imprint based in Carmichael, California. And we're doing several anthologies. One of our contributors, whom also I have the privilege of being a collaborator with, in addition to our mutual friend Juliet Cook, is Mr. Daniel G. Snethen. And uh, Daniel is an educator. He's a naturalist. He lives on the Pine Ridge Native American Indian Reservation and in South Dakota, I believe.
Yes.
South Dakota, and he is very interested in preserving ecological preservation, especially concerned with endangered species. And I believe there's a specific kind of a beetle that you're interested in preserving, who's become extinct and was downgraded. Their extinction status was downgraded. We're going to be talking
Well,
about
they're
that.
not extinct, but they're
Oh,
they're
oh! I mean,
endangered.
I'm
It's
sorry.
become
In
endangered.
danger. Thank you for the correction, Daniel. And also, you have a pet rattlesnake.
Well, I did have. I don't
You
have.
did have. Oh, you no longer have one. Okay, so
Yeah, but I've had more than one over the
oh,
course of
okay,
my history.
okay, cool. I've never known anybody who had a pet rattlesnake before. That's must be interesting. What's it like to have a rattlesnake as a pet?
Well, it's interesting to watch them feed. You know, what's not interesting is when somehow they escape.
Oh wow. Oh wow. So are they, I mean,
And
is it,
I've had that happen. And one day I was sitting right
yeah.
where I am right now, working on my computer, and I looked down on the floor, and I thought to myself, how did that rattlesnake get in here? It never even occurred to me that my rattlesnake got loose.
That's funny. Sort of cognitive dissonance, I guess. Is like,
Yeah, but I
what's
was like, I
what's up
might
with a
better catch that
rattlesnake?
thing.
Hello.
And most people just be freaked out about it. I know they would, but I was just like, he's just chilling. I was like, I guess I'll catch him and add him to my. And I went, wait a second. Something must have happened because I was supposed to have, I had like, at that time, I think I had like four of them.
Oh
And when
wow.
I checked my cage and there was only like one or two that were in there. I never did find one of them.
I mean, I feel so
And I think it
mundane.
just somehow made it outdoors and went its merry way.
Oh my gosh. So,
And
I mean,
I really think I don't lock my door.
uh-huh.
And I went out to like rescue somebody that was out in the boondocks stuck in the mud
Uh-huh.
at like midnight. And then when I came back, I'm working on stuff. And it's about 1:30 in the morning when I notice this. And then I go and I check, and I actually think that somebody came in my house
Wow.
and was messing around. And
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
I don't know for sure, and
Right. Yeah.
pushed on a plug that popped inside the terrarium. Well, of course, they weren't going to reach in the terrarium with these live rattlesnakes.
Huh.
So that's, I mean, I don't know because they never
Yeah.
got out before. I don't know for sure that that's what happened. But here I was very concerned about, I mean, I'm not scared of them, but, I don't want to like roll on top of one or something because,
Yeah.
if, if 300 pounds or 300 plus pounds or whatever rolls on top of you, you're going to like defend yourself. And so with rattlesnakes.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I would never think of having a reptile. Well, I mean, well, that specific, say rattlesnake. as a pet. I mean, the whole idea of a pet is sort of, I think a lot of people think, you know, go for hamster or dog or cat or something, but it's more than just exotic, and it's reflected in your very interesting nature poet. I mean, I would sort of compare you to a sort of a Henry David Thoreau, and
Uh-huh.
who is one of my, greatest inspirations, and personally as a just as a human being, his philosophy is expressed in Walden. And what so this have you always had this close connection with nature?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on a farm and ranch in South Central South Dakota.
Uh-huh.
Uh, in that area, it's an area of sand hills,
Yeah.
and it's geographically, it's not that large of an area. It's sort of an extension of the sand hills of Nebraska, but in South Dakota, it's just kind of a smaller area. And I didn't really realize it, but we have a lot of interesting species that live in that area
Yeah.
that you don't find anywhere else in South Dakota. But I mean, but I'd learned about that stuff, and then as far as like, I didn't really see. I've never seen a rattlesnake where I live, um, but I've seen them in South Dakota. But there are not a lot of them in the Sand Hills area. But there's a lot of other cool things. But I've never seen a snake I didn't want to catch. That's kind of kind of like Mae West that you never saw a man. Like,
Right.
well, I never saw a snake I didn't want to catch, and that's probably not a good thing. But the the first time I caught a rattlesnake, I was going to college in Nampa, Idaho,
Uh-huh.
and I was in a mammalogy class. And part of our class, we had to collect small mammals and make study skins out of them.
Uh-huh.
And we were setting
What what
friend
what's a study skin? I'm sorry.
basically you trap a mammal, and well, I'm not trying to make people sad or anything, but you terminate it,
Right, right.
and uh, and then you skin it, and then you with cotton you just stuff just the skin itself, and it's you make a museum specimen out of it.
How
And
is that distinguished? I mean, that is technically taxidermy, right? But how do you just is that
well,
different from
you don't
taxidermy?
use the type of body.
Oh, I
You
see.
don't put glass eyes in it.
So this is something to
you
work
don't
just
keep
to
the
work
skull or
work with, right? It's
it's
not
just
something to put on a shelf or whatever. Yeah.
well, you could put on a shelf, but mainly usually
Yeah.
museums just kind of keep it for studying.
Okay.
And but we're in I don't know if we're in southern Idaho, in an area that had what's called rim rock, which
Okay.
is a volcanic flow, and you come to the edge of a volcanic flow, and the it breaks down and crumbles away into the slopes of what they call talus,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
big chunks of volcanic, rock. And we were set. There's great places to catch all kinds of different species of mice, and we were setting traps there. And I'm standing on two pieces of lava, which aren't that stable because they're kind of wobbling a little bit.
Right.
And I hear the rattle of a snake,
Oh wow.
and I can't see it,
Oh my gosh.
and I don't know where to step because
Right.
I'm not really scared of them like a lot of people are, but I respect them, and I know that they have the ability to strike about 2/3 of the distance of their body.
Yeah,
And
wow.
I don't want to just step right next to them and get bit. Well, I finally saw it. I had a friend there, and I said, "Hey, watch it." And I ran down and down to the road and got in the back of my old '62 Chevy pickup,
Uh-huh.
and all I could find was a fishing pole and like a 3 gallon ice cream bucket
Oh
from
wow.
Schwan. And I got up there and I was trying to piddle around and use a fishing pole to catch the snake, and I was going to put him in the bucket. And then he decided to crawl head first into a hole. And then I lost all reason. And I reached down and I grabbed the snake by the end of his tail,
Oh my gosh.
pulled him out. But he's only about 1.5 feet long, but he's still pretty thick. And I dropped him in the pail and I put the lid on. And then I had an intense adrenaline rush after that.
Oh wow.
And I hope my whole body was just shaking with adrenaline
Oh my
that's
gosh.
coming off of it. And then we took it back to college and showed it to a couple of my professors. And the next day, one of my professors called me into his office. He said, "Dan, here, I made this for you." And it was a wooden dowel about 3 feet long that slid through a piece of white PVC pipe,
Uh-huh.
had a cable taped around, so it's attached to the PVC pipe, and then the loop that had an eye that was attached to on the end of the wooden dowel. So basically, it was a snake stick.
Oh wow.
And he said, "Dan," he said, "I can tell now that no matter what we tell you, you're just going to catch snakes,
Yeah.
no matter what kind they are." And he said, "I'd feel a lot better if you had one of these." So
You have a
for
tool.
years, I carried that
Yeah.
makes snake stick with me, and everywhere I went. So yeah,
You never
so
know.
I guess you might say, yeah, I kind of like that kind of stuff.
What fascinates you about snakes in particular?
I, I don't know. I think they're cool. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. My dad didn't like snakes. My mom didn't like snakes. Maybe that's why I like snakes.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
I just I I don't know. I just never saw them as threatening,
Yeah.
and I just even to this day, I'll grab a snake that's hissing and striking, and I just reach in and grab it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I, and even if it bites me, I mean, I'm not going to do that to like a rattlesnake. But the
Yeah.
other thing is, I know what the snakes are. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't know what's venomous and what's not.
Yeah.
They can't correctly ID something in the field.
Yeah.
And to them, every snake represents danger.
Right.
Me, most snakes don't represent danger.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the more often you handle snakes, especially if you handle anything that's venomous,
Yeah.
the greater the likelihood you're going to get bit.
Sure.
It doesn't matter how careful or how trained or whatever you are. So I'm not advocating that people do the stupid things I do.
Yeah, it's what's the interesting thing is that in Judeo-Christian mythology, especially, has identified the snake as a sort of, as being a synecdoche with Satan or Lucifer as the tempter, whereas that has caused a lot of problems for snakes. And we're so I would really interested in your work on endangered species. Could you tell me a little bit about that, especially with the beetles?
Well, the there's a whole suite of beetles that feed on um, dead and decaying material,
Uh-huh.
uh, and including also feces or manure. And but the one that strictly pretty much is that feeds on dead animals. I mean, there's several, but one of the main groups of beetles are the carrion beetles. I'm not going to get into all the Latin stuff, okay?
Okay.
But they're and a lot of people don't understand what I say. It's Carrion,
Right.
carrion, A lot of
As
times I think I'm saying carrying, Carryi.
as in, have you ever read Carry and Comfort by Dan Simmons?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Seems like I've heard of Dan Simmons.
Yeah, it was a kind of an apocalyptic novel, kind of along the lines of The Stand. Um, but it's yeah, carrying comfort, and I think it comes from a poem by Keats, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. Yeah.
Well, so anyhow, these beetles, there several different species, just like in South Dakota and Nebraska, which are the two places that I've really done a lot of studying
Yeah.
of them. There's several species that are in the same family, and then there's a genus called Microphorus, which has several species in it.
What is the distinction between a genus and a family?
Well, taxonomically, it goes family and then genus.
Okay.
Okay, so it's more narrowed down.
Oh, I
Okay,
see. Okay. Okay.
and then beneath that then is the species.
I
Your
see.
scientific name is the genus and the species
Okay.
combined.
Okay, cool.
So uh, uh, essentially, I studied the genus Microphorus, but I also studied the other genera that
So,
were in
so, so,
the
so
family.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but etymologically, necrophagous means eating of the dead, correct?
That sounds correct to me.
Yeah. Okay. Necrophage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you have is I don't know if you know what niche partitioning is.
No.
Okay, so a niche is just like a little job.
Okay.
Let's say you have a grocery store.
Uh-huh.
You would have niche partitioning there. You have people that, in order for that to work, right? I mean, the whole system is the store. Within that
Right.
store, you have cashiers, you have
Right.
janitors, you have managers, you have everybody has a certain job, but
Right.
they all live and coexist in that same area.
Right.
But 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 you're not going to necessarily see them at the same time.
Right.
So you're going to have some beetles that are nocturnal out during the night, some that are diurnal that are
Wow.
active at day, some that are going to eat just smaller things, some that need a little larger prey base,
Right.
some that seem to come later to the carcass, you know,
Okay.
as a shade for that sort of thing. Well, the largest beetle in that whole complex of beetles is called the American burying beetle,
I see.
and it's black and orange, but all of the other species in that genus, Microphorus,
Uh-huh.
are also black and orange.
I see.
So to most people, if I put six beetles out there, they would say they all are the same thing.
Right.
But to a trained eye, you would see, oh, its antennal club is black and not orange, or you'd say, oh, look, those marks are slightly different on its hard wing shells.
Right.
So superficially, to the most people, they look like they're the same thing. So a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I've seen American burying beetles all the
Right.
time." I remember.
Yeah.
Well, no, they haven't, or they might have,
Right.
but there are records of this beetle throughout the entire eastern United States in the deciduous forests, all the way from the East Coast to about the Midwest,
Oh, wow.
uh, South Dakota, Nebraska, that
Yeah.
area. And then back, I think in 1970 something, I believe, I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure which year, um, entomologists or whatever, they started recognizing that no one was collecting this American burying beetle.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it turns out it's the largest one, so it has to have a larger prey base in order for it to raise viable young. Because what they do is
Well,
they
I'm sorry, forgive me for interrupting you, but they're the largest of the burying beetles or the largest beetles?
are the largest of the genus Nicrophorus.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and so what they do is they strip the fur and the feathers off of whatever it is that they're whatever carrion that they're feeding on.
Right.
You know, any flies that lay eggs, they'll eat those eggs. They coat that denuded carcass with secretions um, from both ends of their body,
Yeah.
and they are biostatic. They inhibit bacterial growth, so that carcass doesn't start stinking. It doesn't decay from bacteria, and then they tunnel under it
So
and they
so they
bury it.
so they know they're capable of preserving their foods. They can come back to it. That's why they
Well, they mate on it,
oh
so
they mate on it. Okay.
they're necrophiles.
Oh, okay, they're necrophiles. Awesome. Um,
Yeah,
wow.
and the male and the female will stay with the buried carcass, and they practice parental care.
Oh,
Both
that's so
humans could learn a lot from
that's
these.
family values.
Yeah, and then but the thing is most of America has been fragmentized, so um, there's not a lot. Some of the species. Well, one of the species that it probably utilized was the passenger pigeon.
Right.
Okay, so with the demise of the passenger pigeon,
What do
that
you mean? I'm sorry, what do you mean by utilized? Um,
well, they're not going to go to like just a little tiny mouse. They're carrion that they feed on in order to raise viable young, because it's such
yeah,
a larger beetle.
right.
It has to have a piece of carrion that's
Yeah.
large enough to sustain it.
Substantial, right? Okay, yeah, okay.
And about the ultimate size is a passenger pigeon.
Okay,
And
so
so
how big is your average passenger pigeon? Like to sustain,
I don't know. I would think it's probably I don't know. I'm guessing it might be a little larger than what we call pigeons or rock doves,
right.
but I'm not certain.
Okay.
Uh, um, but so these things were abundant. I mean, so they lost that. Then you got deforestation.
Right.
Then you got tearing up of other ground for farming. What
Yeah.
you have mass. I mean, acre after acre after acre of monocultures where there's only one thing,
Yeah.
and that is not good for species diversity.
Yes.
And then you have, insecticides and you have herbicides.
Sure.
And then you got the fact that this beetle is attracted to artificial light, and
Right.
things like opossums and raccoons are also attracted to artificial light at night. So if you got your mercury vapor light on, um, I mean, this beetle I actually have on my own property. Okay,
Wow.
so I've seen this beetle attracted at my mercury vapor light. I've seen raccoons. I've seen possums there. Also, you had a lot of people using bug zappers because we don't like mosquitoes and
Right.
such. And I have we my daughter and I rescued an American burying beetle trying to crawl into my bug zapper, And sad to say, I've actually pulled the charred remains out of one that
Oh, that's so
was
sad.
really trying to get in.
Yeah,
Uh, so I mean, there's a lot of things that go against them. And then if you look at their historic range
yeah,
and you lay out a map of the electrification of North America,
yeah,
the whole eastern part of the US is lit up like a Christmas tree if you look at this map. And then there's little areas in there that are black that suggests there's not a lot of light. And we still find American burying beetles in those pockets.
yeah,
And then we find them on the periphery, on the western edge of those pockets. And then we find them on Block Island off the coast of Rhode Island,
yeah.
which again historically had heath hens, which I don't know
What?
if ever heard anybody talk about that.
No,
I
no, no.
suspect I suspect they got a really good start there because of the heath hens.
Okay,
And now
what do you
they're
mean? Well, okay, so because they feed on the heath hens and then the heath
well,
hens were
the heath hen is the type of probably the type of
right.
carrying bait size wise that they need.
Okay, yeah,
So that's probably one reason why they were really well established there.
right. In
So for a time we had them there and like no place else, and then somebody discovered the
I'm sorry. Where were they established? That you're talking about right
okay.
now?
For a time, they knew they were off the Block Island, off the coast of Rhode Island,
Okay, Rhode Island, yeah.
and they weren't anywhere else in the eastern United States. And then and then somebody discovered them in Nebraska in
Oh wow,
Cherry County around Valentine, Nebraska.
interesting.
And then it's like, well, what's going on? And then somebody found them in South Dakota, and then there's like Arkansas, and there's just different places, but
Yeah,
all these places, um, they don't have a lot of light pollution.
yeah,
And so then I did a study a few years. Okay, so the in order to get them declared to be recovered, there's a recovery plan, which means they have to be reestablished in historic range,
okay.
which that's not happened at all.
What
In
do you mean?
fact,
What's historic range?
entire eastern United States
Oh, okay, yeah,
and in certain states, especially, I did a survey to try to establish their population in South Dakota and where exactly they were,
yeah,
which is on the periphery of the historic range. And I took what we had learned in the, see, I've been studying this beetle for over 30 years. And I took what we had learned in the first, 20 or whatever years.
yeah,
And and then I started reaching out. Well, first of all, I checked those areas again and checked areas in between them, but then I expanded it and I found good numbers and I found them in areas where we didn't know they existed.
oh wow,
Well, we didn't know they existed because nobody checked those areas.
oh wow,
So then, with Keystone Pipeline wanting to come through,
oh man,
and with all this wind farms wanting to come through,
oh man, yeah,
then they misconstrued everything to say, look, these beetles are being found in numbers where we've never had them before, and it's all misconstrued. And I'm not sure if they downlisted it. They may have. I should know, but I mean, I do so many other things, I just
oh
can't
yeah,
track of it. But I'm one of the few people that they pay to go out and figure stuff out like that. And it just frustrates me because here I can prove, yeah, these guys are fairly stable where they're at.
yeah,
But what they need to understand is with endangered species, this is probably anybody listening, this is probably the most critical thing I'm going to say right now. It's not about protecting the species,
yeah.
it's about protecting the habitat.
Okay, okay. So
If
so
you protect the habitat, the species within will be protected.
okay, okay. And what is for layman, what is a habitat?
Well, it's an area where all the conditions, land, moisture, um, prey base, all that,
Uh,
uh, that that an organism requires in order to survive.
yeah,
And there may be a lot of little things that people don't realize that can affect that. And global warming is one of those things.
sure.
Unless of course you find global warming nonsense, but
Well, there's
then
like
I guess that it's
one,
not. But
well, there's one guy in Norway, and I guess Donald Trump, but the rest is, but the overwhelming consensus of the scientific community is that climate change is absolutely real. So
well, yeah, and it doesn't. To me, it's not a political issue.
yeah,
You know, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I really don't care. Um, but but I can tell you as a scientist that it's kind of a ludicrous notion that there is no such thing as global warming. But of course, you don't have to agree with me, and that's fine. I'm not going to like block you on my Facebook page.
hey, I'm. This is fascinating information. I want to kind of move on because we have so much to cover.
But
Uh,
yeah, I did not think we were going to have. I was going to give a diatribe on.
well, it's all good. I mean, I love that stuff, but you know, so I really wanted to talk about your poetics, um, your collaborations with Juliet Cook, our collaborations with one another, and also I wanted to, sort of read, maybe we could read some of our poems that we've written, separately and collaboratively, and with Juliet Cook. And also, but I want to talk about your work as an educator. So could you tell me what you do as you teach um what, biology or natural history or
Well, okay. I'm in my 29th year of teaching on the Pine Ridge Reservation
yeah.
at a school called Little Wound
Uh-huh.
School
Okay.
District. It's in the village of Kyle, South
Okay.
Dakota.
Okay.
And I was hoping to make 3 years there, and I'm in my 29th. And you know how they say, well, we'll try to assimilate Native Americans into our society or whatever.
Sure.
Basically, they assimilated me into their society.
Oh,
And
interesting. Cool.
yeah, and I find that some of the things I do just kind of inherently are just because I've taught there for 29 years, and I've just kind of naturally adapted some of their just ways that seem positive to me. And it seems it doesn't shouldn't be cultural or anything. It just ought to be how people behave. You know. Um,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. If you visit somebody that's home and it's time for you to leave, and there may be, two or three different families there. Um, you get up and you walk around and you kind of approach everyone and you shake their hand before you leave. And I got used to that. So I remember, getting up when I was not there, in my other plane of existence.
Uh-huh.
And I started shaking everybody's hand before I left. And I noticed they kind of looked at me with confusion a little bit, as what is he doing? And it dawned on me that, well, yeah, I never did that before I was out there. And there's nothing wrong with doing it or not doing that. It just felt natural to acknowledge people and, say goodbye.
Sure.
But it seems like uh, in other my other plane of existence that we're too busy. We just, we come, we do our thing when it's time to go. We might say goodbye to the host or something, but we don't walk around and physically, approach
Yeah.
about everybody. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but that's kind of an example of where I feel like, I just kind of um, some things about me changed probably for the better, but I'm not saying you're bad if you don't, you know. And I've got to see a lot of things that most people don't get to do. But anyhow, I teach. I have a master's. Well, first I have my bachelor's degree in biological education,
Okay.
a BA in biological education.
Sweet.
Now, I got my master's degree, but not in education. I got an MS in zoology.
Wow.
And I say zoology, and again, here's a little lesson for people.
Sure.
There is no such word as zoology. Zoology would be ZOOLOGY,
Oh wow, yeah.
study of zoos. Zoo, which means animals or animal life
Yeah.
form. Ology, the study of animal life forms. Zoology. So again, you can say zoology and sound like 98% of society, and you'll be fine. But if you talk to me, I'll be going, a little bit ignorant, but I won't say nothing because they just don't know.
They don't know, right?
They're not stupid. They just don't
Don't
know. So
know.
don't,
Yeah.
but I try to teach my students those sorts of things because if you're going to communicate with people, um, you want them to think that you know something.
Yes.
You're trying to get a job. You're trying to, you know,
Yeah.
relate. But if they say zoology to you and they're interviewing you,
Yeah.
you might want to have a little common sense just to ignore the fact that they said that because
Yeah.
you don't need to be an ass either,
Right. I'm going to share something from my profession, which is I'm a professional rhetorician. So I have certification. I have a master's degree in English literature with a focus on rhetoric and composition. And in composition, um, we say we call it ethos, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's 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 your credibility. So when you're talking with, fellow professionals, so if I was talking with you and I was hiring you for a job with, I don't know, say I ran a school or something, right? Or and 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 I was hiring you as, you know, for exactly what you do as a zoologist, right? Then your knowledge of the correct pronunciation would go to your ethos.
Right.
Right. So that's neither here nor there. That's just a little like thing from my world. Yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah. And the next thing I wanted to say about my college, okay.
Yeah.
Um, I've always been interested in literature.
Yes.
And when I went to college, I would say most people go to college, if they know what they want to do, they pretty much all they look at is what is this prescribed steps that I need to take in order to get from point A to point B. And there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. But a liberal arts education really is supposed to be about learning a lot of different things about a lot of different things, and
Yeah.
and supposedly taking those steps is part of that. But I
Right.
went beyond that. I just took whatever I was interested in. Plus, I made sure I took what I needed.
Yeah.
And it took me like 5.5 years to get my bachelor's degree, but I took every literature class I could take. In fact, some
Yeah.
classes that were only offered to literature majors.
Uh, you'll get no
And
comment from me that with that.
and they would look at me like,
Right.
"Well, you don't have to be in this class." Yeah, I know I don't have to be in this class. I want to be in this class.
Yeah,
And but
what a
maybe
thought, right?
the literature teachers wanted me in their
Yeah.
classes, and and I kind of a classic story because I was kind of um, um, unorthodox, I guess you might say.
Oh, yeah.
I went to this one class and I heard through the grapevine, the professor said, and then I had this Snethen in my class.
Oh my gosh.
And he would come in every day. He'd have his cap on. And he'd sit there with a cup and he'd be chewing sunflower seeds during the lecture, spitting them into the
Oh
cup,
my gosh.
filling the cup once in a while, and seeds all over the place.
Damn.
But how could I get upset with him? He was not a literature major. He was the only one that came to class prepared. He was the only one that actually read the stuff. He was the only one that I could actually have a discussion with about what was going on.
Yeah.
So I just put up with that other stuff because at least this guy knew what was going on.
I loved students like you. A lot of my students, well, I taught developmental communication. So I taught like, a lot of like, they weren't non-traditional college students, maybe, adult learners or disabled people. And it was a lot of fun. They had a lot more real um beauty to them, a real beauty to them, these people that you didn't find in students who have kind of felt, you know, a little bit more entitled, like they did that they and also the immigrants. I really found that the immigrant, I mean, some of the second generation, people that I had, their family immigrated from places like Guatemala and Mexico and El Salvador, but the ones who really crossed the border themselves had a lot more respect and discipline because they of what they had to go through.
Yeah, well, no entitlement, none of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. I'd love to talk about your poetics.
Well,
What is your
before I get there,
yeah,
uh,
sure.
I'll try to do this a little quicker, okay?
Okay.
So you can see I was much a biologist, really in the field biology, very much in the literature. So then when I started teaching, I ended up coaching oral interpretation of literature. I ended up coaching drama. And of course, when I wrote poetry, my love for words, but also my love for nature, my love for, natural history,
Yes.
all that factored in. Okay. And also growing up, I was very much into Edgar Allan Poe,
Oh, me too. Yeah.
and I became, later on in life, I found out about people like H.P. Lovecraft
Yeah.
and I'm trying to think of his name now, Clark Ashton
Clark
Smith,
Ashton Smith.
that whole thing. So a lot of that stuff, and then of course, so basically, a lot of what I do is just a lot of what I did that, of course, nobody thought I needed to do has ended up being very useful in how I teach and approach education. And then And then I never have to look for a job in the summer. Somebody always offers me something, whether it's research with the American burying beetle or some other sort of research. Um, a couple of years ago, I and two students went to Boston for a week to work on some DNA study on museum preserved frogs
Nice.
from 1890, and that's because
Oh, wow.
just because of context. And I try to teach my students to never burn bridges and how to network. And this is where we are right now. Through networking, of course, one of the first persons that really liked my stuff and didn't think I was just some weirdo wacko was Juliet Cook. So I started
Yeah.
sending her more stuff. She started publishing it. And then I don't remember how I come across it, but I come across somebody else that had like a poetry blog online, and she liked my stuff, and she was friends with Catfish McDaris,
Yes.
who told her, "Hey, if you could ever let this Snethen guy know, I'm going to be putting this anthology of poetry together. That's dedication um, to Van Gogh."
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'd forgotten that you were part of Catfish's and that the Van Gogh's ear thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so then I sent him a bunch of stuff, and he liked my stuff because it was that natural history type. Really, in the description, people sound very descriptive.
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you, Juliet Cook, for thank you for, and I can't remember the lady's name that had that blog. Thank you to Catfish. And in the meantime, then I was starting to find out some other different venues, and I don't know what happened to Dark Gothic Resurrected. I don't think it's any longer, um, but I used to submit a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
Then I found out about Yellow Mama and uh, um, trying to remember the other one. It's their other magazine, but and then Juliet, she published my um, chapbook of doll poems, Pediophobia.
Yeah, that's right.
And,
Do
and
you know?
then I tried to get her to publish my clown poems,
Right. Which I will be publishing in Floppy
which
Shoes
she
Apocalypse
said,
3. Is that right?
and she said, well,
Yeah.
you should really contact, Alex S. Johnson, which, by the
Yeah.
way, I don't know. Did you know that there's a hotel, Alex Johnson, in Rapid City, South Dakota?
I do. Yeah, I do.
And did you know that that hotel is in North by Northwest? Alfred
I
Hitchcock's.
did not know that, but I
Yep,
love that
that
movie.
is the
Wow.
hotel that's in that
Oh my
movie.
gosh.
And across the street, there's a place called the Elks Theater, and they would watch the dailies every night
Oh,
in the Elks
wow.
Theater, and Hitch would sit in one particular seat.
Nice.
And there's like a suite or whatever in Hotel Alex Johnson that's named after Hitchcock. I don't know if that's where he stayed or what, but yeah. So it's
Wow.
really interesting, whether you realize it or not. You know, um, so your name is really intriguing to me just because of that history.
Well, yeah, and I happen to be like I'm not I guess I'm probably I think the world's biggest Hitchcock fan was Francois Truffaut, right? But I am certainly enormous. I'm a student of film and as a journalist, I spent many years interviewing people. I even traveled to when I was in London, I interviewed Caroline Munro, and people like that. And I worked with a guy named Jason J. Slater, who later was the publisher and editor of my novel Jason X Death Moon, which was an official spin-off from the New Line Cinema franchise of Friday the 13th. and he ran uh, 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 J-Boy. We call him J-Boy. Um, he's my mate. He did something called Diabolique through Flesh and Blood Press, and we did. He also wrote the movie Perverella, which was
Barbarella.
well, Perverella. It had to
Oh,
do with witches, and I don't know. It's a very Monty Python-esque kind of
okay,
film.
okay.
Yeah, I
I
didn't mean
thought
to
you were talking about
interrupt
the
you.
Jane. I thought you were talking about the Jane Fonda Barbarella for a second.
Well, it was kind of a takeoff, and then
Okay.
and that was made by a guy named Alex Chandon, who went on to make a movie called Cradle of Fear with Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all. More,
I'm not. I'm
yeah,
not. I'm so eclectic. It's
yeah,
odd that I know what I know, and it, and into the people who know that I know that, it's really odd that I don't know anything else.
yeah. What is it specifically? I know that I was just looking at like I published this book, The Death Jazz, back in 2012 through the Schwibley Press, and I was just looking at some of the people that I thank in the book, um, and I was thinking, what? Oh yeah, I thanked Juliet Cook. So this is back then. It was in 2012, so I've known her at least that long, and she published. But she was one of the first people. Will when I moved back to Sacramento, California, I I was published by her in 2012, and then I moved back here, and I think she's kind of off and on published me ever since then, and you and I and she did at least one collaboration. This is a three-headed, gore-mouthed kaiju, which was which is really so. What do you love about working with Juliet?
Well, for one thing, I actually like talking to her on the phone. Um, she really exudes warmth
She seems
and
warm. Yeah.
and exuberance, excitement. Um, she likes the strange. Um, and I mean, I like her writing as well. Um, I don't know. It's a hard thing for me to explain, but I really feel like, as far as my, initially um, getting the idea, hey, people will publish my stuff. She's kind of the one that really got me thinking, okay, this is one editor that I can send to that actually likes the fare that I put together, you know.
Yeah.
And I write a lot of different sorts of things, and you know, then I just try to figure out who's going to take what. But she likes kind of the strange and out of the ordinary, and um, she seems to understand and make connections that maybe other people won't or
Yeah.
don't. Um, I think a lot of people feel like poetry has to be a certain way or a certain thing, certain style. And I would say poetry can be a certain way, a certain thing, a certain style, and still be poetry.
Oh,
But I think there's a lot of ways of approaching poetry, and I write. I have stuff that I would call my psychedelic stuff,
sure. Yeah, I really like that. It's part
and
of you.
I have stuff that's just strictly about nature. but I also really like, and I think Juliet does, things that are dark. And
Yeah.
I didn't really realize it, but when I start thinking about a lot of what I liked that we were reading in college and things like that
Yeah.
are dark in nature. And as a as a drama coach, I I usually choose something that's a little different or a little dark or whatever, or an oral interp coach. If the kids want a piece, I usually give them something that's a little, you know, and other people, look at, oh, they don't even know where in the world to find this stuff. And they give people, I don't want to say they give them bad stuff. It's just, I don't think there's a lot of growth in some of the stuff that students get in some of these programs.
So
They're
could
not
you,
challenged.
yeah, could you, because I haven't been in education other than I teach, I'm a writing tutor. But I haven't, and I have one student who's over in Liverpool, John Sisson, but I haven't really taught in a college setting for a while now. Um, so what kind of stuff are they getting? What kind of fare are they getting?
Well, I don't know what to tell you, but I will tell you this, okay?
Yeah,
If I were forced to take literature classes,
yeah,
and now don't get me wrong, I mean some of these I might like, okay, but right now I'm going to destroy the literary canon,
oh no,
okay?
oh no, please, oh no, you're gonna destroy the literary canon. You're gonna
Okay,
you're gonna blow up the literary canon.
yeah. I kind of liked Huckleberry Finn,
Nothing wrong
but
with that, but
but it is not approachable to high school students. And I've had teachers say, "Oh no, 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 I can make it approachable." No, you can't. You just can't. Don't tell me that you can unless every one of your student is in the top 1% of the nation. They're not ready for it. If you want them to read Samuel Langhorne Clemens, which is Mark Twain, let them read Tom Sawyer. At
yeah,
least that's a story. At least it's interesting. At least you can follow it. You're not ready. Why would you give them the very first thing they give them by Mark Twain is Huckleberry Finn?
yeah.
Oh, because I can teach all these. No, you can't.
I mean,
Okay. Second of all,
well, it is
um,
kind of a picaresque novel. I mean, it's more like a Don Quixote or something. It's all these
but
little
I'm saying,
episodes. Yeah,
wait till later in life. What happens is these English teachers they make it so nobody wants to read
that's
because
for
they
sure.
force you to read the stuff you don't like.
Yeah, and it's boring at that stage of your
And
journey.
and I am telling you, I know this is really going to make people mad, but Lord of the Flies, stupid.
Okay.
I
Uh,
don't care about some little punk kids that were mean and beat up some other kids. And you have to understand for every summer for the last 20, 30 years of my life, I've rotted rats and I've seen maggots crawling around inside and out of every
yeah.
orifice you can think of. So that horrible sight of the maggots on the pig's head is like what how what is that's nothing.
Well, you have a unique perspective, my friend. So, you know,
And I watched the movie, it was boring, and I read about two-thirds of the book that followed the movie. And I'm like, I just can't, this is just bad. And then I thought to myself, but you know what would make this book better? If Edgar Rice Burroughs had written it.
interesting.
He would have made, yeah, that's what he would have made it. And of course, the very people that laud the book would say, "Oh, Edgar Rice Burroughs, he was a hack." well, maybe, but he sold thousands and thousands and
Right.
thousands of
And
copies.
and they named the town of the city of Tarzan
Tarzana, California.
after him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I'm going to segue into talking about the Burroughs anthology that I put together that you and Juliet are in, and you and I are in various permutations and combinations. And one thing is that when I was a kid, I was like maybe 10, 11, 12. I absolutely adored anything by Edgar Rice Burroughs and his stories about Pellucidar or whatever it's called, Pellucidar, and I'm not sure if I got into Tarzan, but his stories were just really they were terribly written. I mean, the style was just sort of like pulp, just pure pulp. But but which I later discovered, like, oh my God, this is really terribly written, but it was so engaging and I was so in love with his stuff, right? And your camera disappeared.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for something. I didn't want to use in that bat,
Okay, okay,
but I can't find it.
okay.
But I was gonna pull up an old pulp magazine of the cover of Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Oh wow.
Let me go on record saying he's my favorite author.
Okay.
Okay, now I've heard all the, well, this and that and that and that about him,
Yeah.
but you know what? Show me a book he wrote that's not interesting. And I would there's like maybe two or three that I could understand somebody saying aren't interesting,
Uh,
but the rest are. And I don't know. I mean, if you think I'm a good writer, part of the reason why I'm a good writer, I would say it's because I read Edgar Rice Burroughs.
well, he certainly knew how to tell a damn good adventure story. It was very
Well,
engaging.
and that's what I want when I read. I don't want
Yeah.
some moralistic thing. I want to actually enjoy the read.
Me too. Me too. I mean, I'm always as an author, I always think what I want to do is not bore my reader. I want to directly engage them. And so I leave out a bunch of the shit that other people put in because they think they have to describe the entire fucking room. And it's like, no, just just say what happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Leave out the
Well,
extraneous stuff.
two more. I want to attack two more things.
Yeah.
Some people say that The Great Gatsby is the great American novel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's the great American bore.
Okay, I would tend to disagree with you on that, but I would like to hear you out because you're my guest.
Well, okay, here's the thing. It's just, to me, it's just not that interesting. We read it in high school.
Okay.
It's not like I didn't understand it. I did. And years later, I watched the movie with Bruce Dern in it. He's one of my favorite actors. So I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. It was still boring. But this much I will say about it. Almost everything that I know about the Roaring Twenties, things about the Flappers and Bathtub Gin and the Jelly Bean Girls and all
Right.
that, comes from having read The Great Gatsby.
Right.
So I'm not saying I didn't learn some stuff from it, but
Sure.
as far as being interested to read it, it just wasn't. And
Fair
then I'm
enough.
going to
Fair
attack,
enough.
and then I'm going to attack the greatest film of all time.
Not Citizen Kane. Please don't say Citizen Kane.
Yeah, that's terrible. It's
What?
so boring. It
Dude.
is so boring.
Oh my God.
Absolutely boring. And we wait all this time to find out that, what? Who's talking about a
Oh
sled that I used to ride
my.
down the hill? Rosebud.
Yeah.
Now, was it an important film? Yes. Why? Because they cut holes in the stage and they shot angles that had never been shot cinematography. Well, I never can say that correctly. So things that they did with the cinematography were groundbreaking, things that had never been done before. So when they shot upward at an angle at Orson Welles and he was larger than life looming up there, all that was important. All of that. And we still owe a lot to that movie today for how a lot of these things, the innovative ideas, ways of
Yeah,
shooting and stuff was done. But as far as the story itself,
yeah.
it's like it was just I couldn't keep. I had a hard time watching it without sleeping. It was terrible.
Okay, fair enough. Fair
Now, if
enough.
you want to watch a really good Orson Welles movie, watch The Third Man.
I was about to say, right? The Third Man.
I
Because
love The Third Man. The
great film. Yeah,
cinematography in that,
yeah,
there hasn't been a film that had better cinematography or similar since that until The Lighthouse that
yeah.
came out a few
I
years
haven't
ago.
seen that. I haven't. The Willem
Well,
Dafoe.
watch it. The
In it? Yeah.
cinematography is amazing.
Okay.
And if you want to watch something, you'd have to go. Now I haven't seen every movie, but I really think about these things. So I
Uh,
go, you got the Third Man, and then you got the Lighthouse, and nothing else in between that I've seen
yeah.
matches the cinematography. That's what I wanted to say. Those are the things
Okay.
I don't mean to offend anybody, but I have a reason for why I like or
I
dislike something.
appreciate that. I respect that. You know what? I was just thinking maybe we could get Juliet Cook on the show and we could do this, we could do a three-way conversation here. That would be interesting. I don't know if you would be interested in that. Um, but so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to ask you to read anything you want. It could be from a short story, it could be a poem, something you did with Juliet, something you did on your solo, or whatever you like.
Okay, I got to think about. I have to find it. Okay, and I'm not sure. Well, I know what I would like to read, but I got to try to figure out. It's hard for me to do this and not lose this page.
Yeah, I should have told you ahead of time that I wanted to read stuff, but just take your time. Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna see if it's. Hopefully, it's not on my jump drive because that's in another room. But I'm gonna go to. I have an external hard drive,
okay.
and I'm gonna see if this particular poem is on there.
What one thing that's pretty cool is that I've got enough with Mish Murphy, Eileen Murphy.
Eileen.
Yeah, Eileen Murphy.
I don't know her, but I'm familiar with her through. I think through 13 Minor Birds and Juliet Cook.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and
I think that's
she also had a chapbook called Evil Me that Juliet published through Blood Pudding Press. And she also she's just sent me a couple of weeks ago, she sent me her Evil Clowns short story. So I'm going to be publishing sooner than later um Floppy Shoes Apocalypse 3, a grease paint inferno, and the title story, the title poem was as a collaboration between me and Juliet, and it was published on Horror Sleaze Trash. So remember, I was going to hook you up with Horror Sleaze Trash because
okay.
Catfish and I also published with them.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, um, I have my poem.
Okay. Cool.
Um, I think, and I know there will be those that disagree. I think it might be the best poem I've ever written. It just recently got accepted for publication by Yellow Mama.
Yellow,
on
who who
Yellow Mama.
who is Yellow Mama? So I can maybe submit some stuff.
Um, um, people ask me. Anytime I would know her name, and it'll come to me.
Okay,
Okay. Um, I'm ashamed to say that I can't think of her name now.
that's cool.
Uh,
Yeah,
but um,
this is actually a drawing pencil. I'm using it to take notes, but I'm an artist as well. I
but but but
yeah.
but she said when she read it, she stopped and was like crying like two
Oh
different times.
wow.
Okay, and uh, and I hope I can read it without crying. And I'm not going to give you any precursor, any background information.
Right.
I'm just going to read it, and hopefully people will understand it, and I'll start it.
Okay.
It's called Night of the Lunar Eclipse. I tried, Dan. I really did. But my time has come. It has been appointed unto all men once to die. The same holds true for dogs, too. I hear you calling my name, Dan, and I almost bark because I can hear the fear and sadness in your heart as you cry out, Nightly, Nightly, buddy, where are you? I want to bark and let you know, but I am weak and ready to go. You know, the doctors only gave me 3 months to live, even after the amputation. But we beat the odds and shared over 19 more months together. And I thank you, Dan, for all the things I got to do during that time with my two closest friends. You and Tori made my life a wonderful thing to have. I really didn't miss that leg, and you were patient with me. You took me to Yellowstone and tumbled me off my seat when a grizzly bear walked in front of the vehicle. You took me to Forks, Washington, where I dreamed of chasing vampires and killing werewolves. The voyage on the Pacific, looking for whales, terrified me. I don't have sea legs, and I definitely am a landlubber tripod. But your sister Karen let me lay at her feet, reassuring me as you stood at the boat's edge on a choppy ocean, looking for Moby or some other Leviathan surfacing the cresting sea.
Hmm.
You took me to Silver City, Idaho, a mountain ghost town, and ate several slices of their various famous pies. I visited your major professor who invited me in on equal terms. I listened to you two reminiscing about days of yore, chasing lizards, banding birds, and catching kangaroo rats. You took me north of Allen, where I got to explore the North American pole of greatest inaccessibility. You took me to places few dogs have ever gone before. Now we are at your ranch. You have fence to fix and expect me to follow along. Even with just 3 legs, chasing you is so much fun. But I'm not feeling well. And your ranch is my favorite place. And I want to stay here, Dan. I will miss you and Tori too. But most of all, I know you love me and I love you too. I want to bark. I want you to hold me. I want to spend more time with you. Please tell Tori I love her and not to cry too much. And tell her thank you for taking me on walks. I will miss her oh so much. I have found my spot. I know you are searching. My heart is aching. It wants to explode. The sky is dark, and I sense something is eating the moon. I see a dozen stars streaking across the darkling sky, blazing brightly before burning out. And I identify with those dying stars. My once glowing light is fading too, and I whimper softly and I cry, knowing I'll never again feel your thick fingers running gently through my hair, or be able to share your bed on a cold wintry night. And I love you, Dan. I truly do. I truly do. I truly do. And I love you. And I love you. And I cry that I can no longer stay on this plane. The cancer has returned, and I hear the stars beckoning me homeward. So I must leave. I know it's true. Why else would some celestial entity be eating the moon?
That is profound. That is profound and moving and beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I don't even know what to say. I like to sit with that, you know. I like to sit with that. And I'm actually doing a grief anthology. You know, it's called Lacrimae, and I would love to have a piece from you. If your friend would give me permission to republish that, or if you could write me something new for the book,
Well,
because
okay. I know that they'll have it's either 6 or 9 months of
okay,
electronic rights.
yeah, okay. So actually, it's going to be published around December, so maybe that's more than 6 months, right?
Yeah, and
So
this one's going to come out in their Valentine issue because it considers it a
okay.
love.
So Valentine's, it says that's February, so um this two, so 12, so yeah, much more than like 3 months, yeah, past that 6 months. So it would be able
Well,
to.
but it might be 90. It might be 9 months. I think it's six, but I'll have to
Oh,
look.
okay. So or if you could write me an original, maybe that
Yeah.
would be better because I'm putting it together. This is actually something that my friend Emily Frank suggested.
Is this thing going to be a
Right.
print? Is this going to be in print?
Yes, it'll be in print in all forms, all formats. So hardcover, Kindle,
So
paperback.
it won't be electronic then.
It will be a Kindle as well as, you know, paperback, hardcover. You can something that you
Yeah.
could put on a coffee
Well,
table.
we'll look at it because to be honest with you, I would like to see it in print, as in hard copy.
Yes. Well,
So I'll look.
okay, cool. I really appreciate that. And it's a thank you for sharing that beautiful, beautiful, profound poem. It made me so, I mean, because, you know, I've had a lot of loss in my life recently, especially, and not necessarily people. Well, I also am still mourning some friends of mine that died, particularly my friends Jordan Gallagher, who was the a co-editor of my book Anthem, a tribute to Leonard Cohen, as well
Oh,
as the late great well, Leonard Cohen, right? And then Joe Pulver, who was a good friend of mine, who's also in that book Anthem. And I'm just gonna for the people, um, because is still available on Amazon. This is what it looks like. And it's got a lot of really, really awesome writers. Dennis Lee, um, Max Munden, Rebecca Olander, Joe Pulver contributed a long, long, long piece in his very distinctive um, style. He actually won the Shirley Jackson Award for it's one of his books. He was a major horror and weird fantasy and kind of cosmic pulp guy.
Who is
And
this?
his name is Joseph S. Pulver Sr., Joe Pulver. He used to be on there's a show called, I don't know if they still do it, but it's called the Lovecraft E-Zine. And then they had people, a round table with people like Ramsey Campbell, and Joseph Pulver had a big old like mustache, and he was, and he and um his widow Catherine Pulver lived in Germany, and Joe died of COPD. He was a great friend of mine, and he was also a big jazz fan. So we would talk about jazz a lot. And Jordan, my friend dear friend, who co-edited this book, Jordan Gallagher, she actually took her name from the character Jordan in, The Great Gatsby. She died of a um, overdose of fentanyl, 2020, the same year as Joe. They were they were like born a decade apart. So um, Joe was born in 1955. Jordan was born in 1965. So she was a year older than I am.
Yeah, I was born in 65.
Okay, wow. So I would like to now read just a little bit from this. Um, so this is actually Joe. This is not going to be I'm going to read two things that are not. Well, one of them is selections from Will Home Remember Me by Joseph S. Pulver Sr., which was taken from Anthem. Okay. Will Home Remember Me? They changed the door locks at the Chelsea Hotel. Asylum for some of us. Sigh. Left my now useless worn key in the sewer grate at the end of the block. Sigh. Skeletal remains of midnight. Pain walkers. Night wolves. Tattoos and slow motion dead endings. Ain't got. Avalanche of butchers on the street corner singing dress rehearsal rags between the hot rush of the devil's crazy truth. Sigh. No playful naked moon lighting blessed hours. Sigh. Out of fire. Sigh. But I still have an idea left in me. Sigh. No curatives for my waltz and this disorder. Sigh. Or what passes for love after closing time. Sigh. Grief. Sigh. Lunacy. Sigh. Missed out. Sigh. Shit out. Sigh. Ain't done crying. Sigh. Old army jacket I've draped over my spent is not blue, is no raincoat. Not even close. Sigh. Street level. After midnight is put back in its coffin. Sigh. Tawdry neon winking. Wounded sex music sirens evicted from Vienna and other spice boxes. Still pretty as they cry in the ashes and sand. Sigh. Pool hall afterlife. Sigh. Fresh off the ghost ship girl from a Raymond Chandler movie. Fixed to ruin without a map to the graveyard shift. Sigh. Alpha predator with claws to catch. At its six, a greasy gray toady, reeling in the scrap. Sigh, spit, sigh, spark, sigh, screamer, sigh, fever, sigh. Looking past the tribe, sharing crazy with crazy, through the cracks in the chessboard, dance floor, toward home, sigh. I was a king, iron, that didn't ask questions. I had flowers for every occasion and friends who collected golden stories to brighten any temporary gloom. Thought my lamps wouldn't let the world change. My broom out of roses and chocolates, pushing little but sand and dust. I didn't notice I was gathering rust, lost the feathers on my bicycle, wound up a loser, beautiful behind me with the hymns of history and all the bales I lifted on the shores of the Mohawk. Home. Do they let sparrows that wasted the waltz return? Sigh. Home. Is it still sweet, or does she still wear? Damn you, sigh. Roll of smoke. Light it with a bent paper match, sigh. My feet sore in Hank Williams shoes. Begin all night, sigh. Miles. No angels. Sigh. Can't remember how far or how many rivers need to be crossed, but it's that way. Miles. Scar. Hill. Encounter. And more again. Sigh. Gravel. Asphalt. Grassy path. South behind me. Morning miles. Morning aches. Sigh. Thirst to exhume, but I hid in the tombstone yard. Sigh. Washed linens on the line, dress, trousers, underclothes, tobacconist, barber shop, post office, bookstore. Silent as the long letter written, but never mailed. And, talk about, I wrote a letter to the world that never wrote to me. Um, Jordan, the late great Jordan Gallagher, we and Joe, we talked a lot about Thomas Wolfe, and there's some implicit references to Thomas Wolfe in there. And Jordan would write things in books. So she had our, our dear mutual friend, Michelle Fairchild, has inherited a lot of her books and even has her makeup and her clothes and her hard drives. And she wrote stories about me and Toomey and Joe, and she collaborated, and we would sort of go round and round. And let's see. So I wanted to follow up that one with um, this is something I actually read on the Rick Lupert's Cobalt Poets thing. It's called the no, no, I didn't read it. I read this actually on the last Smol Bear Show. And this was dedicated to her when she was still around. This is called The Black Death and Other Colors for Jordan Gallagher. It wasn't some game they played. Aqueous tiddlywinks on the grue-spackled sea. Some had forgotten their minds, gone sideways and bloodthirsty, reclaiming with tridents the source divine. Crippled with comfort, they sought anarchy. As they drifted, thoughts dressed in Puritan black, Hieratic strides to a future bent back, my words grow absurd with the will to describe salons in gay Paris, Balzacian hive and colors rippled opiate, camera lucidic. These photos ate Blake. Meanwhile, clockwork figures retrieve ecstatic poetry plucked from her sleeve. The audience starts. You could hear a pin drop the unwritten diaries of Anais Nin. And oh, yes, disease. Let me tell you a story in Whitechapel, East End, a gentleman gory, perhaps syphilitic. His victims admitted, those not slain were flattered and smitten, and followed the Ripper in steam-driven hearses, reciting their love for the man in cold verses. So that is from Skull Vinyl Poems 2012 to 2017, which miraculously found its way into the Widener Library at Harvard University, thanks to Craig Thomas, who's the chief cataloger there. So shout out to Craig Thomas. Um, so what we have, so we've got a lot, you and I, Daniel, we've got a lot of projects we're doing now. Um, I would really like to have that poem or something original for the Lacrimae, the anthology about grief. We've got the Junk Merchants too, a a literary tribute to William S. Burroughs. You have a piece in there, two pieces actually. The Church of Rust, which I believe it was a collaboration.
Yes.
Yes, and the I don't know how to pronounce it. The
Nick and Nick Killings.
yeah, yes. So that's. I just want to show the people this is not formatted or anything. This is not the way it's going to look, but this is a mock-up proof copy of the book, which doesn't reflect the fact that we got V. Vale from Research Publications or in Jarbo in there. This does have the David J. Haskins from the band Bauhaus, who wrote the song Bela Lugosi's Dead, among other things. And so it's just sort of it starts out with a forward which was done by the founder of Poets for Peace, Larry Jaffe, whose work was found is archived with people like Nikki Giovanni in the unpublished portions of the autobiography of Malcolm X. And then introduction facts about Mr. Burroughs by a guy named who's goes by the author name of Poppy Z. Bright, Billy Martin. And then the excuse me, the a William S. Burroughs interview that was conducted by Ron Whitehead, and then Calling the Toads, which was a love poem that he wrote for William S. Burroughs. And this is actually he's the Ron Whitehead is the U.S. National Lifetime Beat Poet Laureate, and he was also nominated for the Pulitzer Prize and the Nobel Prize in Literature. Very fortunate to have him. And then we have El Hombre Invisible for Joan Fulmer Burroughs by David J. Haskins from the band Bauhaus. And then Black Metal Sin Booths by myself and Juliet Cook. I'd love to have you read something else.
Um, yeah, and I had something in mind, not deep, but I don't. I think it's on my junk drive. But let me ask you a question. Did you
Sure.
say you had something? You wrote something commemorating Leonard Cohen. Is that what you said?
Yes, I mean, in fact, well, I created this book and I published this book. It was co-edited by two friends of mine, one of whom is no longer with us. Jordan Gallagher's passed away in 2020. Celine McLeod is up in Canada, and it's Anthem, a tribute to Leonard Cohen, and Nocturnicorn Books 2017. Um, and it's a really, really beautiful book.
Well,
So the cut,
can
yeah,
you
sure.
do me a favor?
Yeah,
Because this is just going to take me like less than a minute.
yeah.
I'm going to turn my video, my camera off,
Okay.
and if you don't mind talking for that length of time, I'm going to go get my jump drive, and
Yeah,
then I
no
can
worries.
because it's not on my external hard drive, so
Yeah,
I'm thinking home is on that.
yeah,
So I'll
sure.
be right back. But
No worries.
you know, okay.
Okay, so well, Daniel is getting his I think it's his junk drive. Um, I'm going to read something from the Death Jazz. Um, okay, okay. All right. This is from 2012, as encouraged to publish this by Ellen Mabey, is a close friend of mine from in LA that I met by and through Beyond Baroque. And this is a poem called William Blake. William Blake, I've got the nervous fear. Teach me how to see your patent tigers. I want to paint with corrosives. I'm tired of this ratio. Only five senses and an endless remix. Where are the angels in the tree? How did Urizen get locked in forever? How do I calculate profit and loss? And where is the feast they promised us? I only want a tiny piece of marble. Teach me how to crack it open. I know the stars are in there somewhere. This one is called Black Acid Devil. I raced the devil up a staircase made of owls. The owls were on fire. As we stamped their flaming carcasses, they exploded in cylindrical columns of ash. They were so excited to be there. The television set had grown roots. On the screen, black cats raked the faces of network news anchors. Their claws spurted strychnine. Wall Street was a howling abyss. A golem of paper currency with eyes of gold bullion stomped the streets with $1 million boots. God had left his autograph, the devil too. Hear what the pretzel guy has to say about life inside M&M's candies. This new cinema is very perplexing. I can't stay outside the frame. Every movement tracked by churches, all water, wine too serene. And just one more poem, I guess. Zombie Boomtown. This is from the Death Jazz. Zombie Boomtown. I get it. You're black metal freaks, deliquescent raven heads dripping motor gook and flakes of rotting ectoplasm. I salute you at the beginning of a short and twisted career. Guilt for the dead, it's a terrible thing, but they always do come back. I watched you make a zombie boom town from a forest of rags and hand me down voodoo. I think I shall wait until you return is something not so horrible. I think I shall wait to pluck the right bone for my lyre. I think I shall wait till the glass screams in agony and the zombies are statues of hard cocaine. I think it will go down like the farthest fingers of an Arctic stream, a shrugged virus. It will be interesting to watch the blueprints for Zombie Boomtown themselves go boom.
I found it.
Okay, excellent.
So I read it.
Absolutely.
It's called Waiting for You to Come. I waited for you tonight. Warm schlitz spilled on my belly stretched beater as I sat in my horsehair chair, waiting for you, bitch. I waited for you tonight. Cigarette ash dusted the floor boards of my clapboard shack as I sat in my horsehair chair, waiting for your ass to get home. I waited for you tonight, wondered whose arms were wrapped around you, whose mitts were pawing your round, wanton breasts as I sat in my horsehair chair, waiting for you to come, waiting for you. I, with my Colt 45, cylinder loaded, hammer cocked, sitting in my horsehair chair, ready to put a slug into you. Come on home, baby, because I'm sitting here buzzed on Lucky Strikes and beer, sitting in my horsehair chair, handshaking, eyes straining, waiting for you to come.
That's I love it. I love it. It's so the repetition, the horsehair chair, waiting in the horsehair chair. It just it kind of plants you, right? It plants you down with the guy. He's sitting there, and it's sort of like a point of view where you're the camera, right? I mean, you can it's like a perspective, like a first person perspective where you can see that he's sitting there and you put us in the horsehair chair. I really like that one. That's genius. Um, and it was so good. At first I was like, man, sounds personal, man. It's like, and then when we had the 38 or whatever it was, like I was like, oh, okay, it's you did the persona so well. Wow, that was good. What would be awesome? Maybe I should do a true crime or like not a true crime, but a crime book. Do you think people would be
And,
into that?
that's inspired by a Leonard Cohen song.
Oh, which song was that?
Um, Baby, I've been, I forget how,
Yeah.
waiting for you. I forget how it goes. Um,
Huh.
and I couldn't see it, but I actually have another version.
Oh wow.
Um, but I don't know if I can find it. But it's from the version of a cow
Oh
that had
wow.
a calf, and the rancher's going out there and it's going to castrate the calf right out there in the field.
Yeah.
And she's waiting for him because she knows what he's going to do to her calf. And I dedicated it to the person who's actually the South Dakota State Poet Laureate, who's a
Oh
rancher.
wow. Wow. Awesome.
But yeah, so when you mentioned Leonard Cohen, I was like, oh, I have a Leonard Cohen poem.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe I could do a special well, I don't know. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but a lot of these it didn't really get a big play on Amazon, but it's still a lot of my books and my anthologies are kind of they've been sitting there, they're gold, they're really gold. They never really had an opportunity for people um to sort of learn more about them. And so this is why I'm kind of trying to pump up more interest in the books themselves by doing a Small Bear Show and talking with the contributors. Not everybody who's on the show is a contributor, but um, we're doing actually we was talking about our mutual friend Catfish McDaris, and he's going to be on the show on Friday.
Yeah,
So
I saw an allusion to that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's going to be fun. That's always
Yeah,
good to.
I've actually had him on a show before.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so one thing is, speaking of loss, I did lose my partner, not to death, but to other kind of death. And so I deleted all of our shows. And so I'm really kind of trying to do it over solo, not not to if erase her memory, but to sort of more to um, give a new focus on the people who have been on the show in the past and with more of a focus on them as opposed to whatever was going on with me and Dalia. So I would welcome you back on the show, and maybe we could get Juliet. I'm not sure. Maybe we could talk about that. Um, I don't know what her schedule is like. Since we have so much that we've done together, individually, you and I and Juliet and um, so I think one of the things I love about her poetics is she has a very kind of a savage, surreal, hallucinogenic, um, raw, visceral, almost primal approach to language. It's so dark and so as you said dark, right? And I really love the things that she did with the red was it called Red Sky or something like that? Red Sky?
I don't know.
She did
Was,
that
was there someone called Red Rabbit?
well she did a whole series of like red poems, and
Oh,
some of
I
them
don't know.
are she did a couple that were YouTube videos.
Oh, I haven't seen any of your YouTube videos, I don't think.
Okay. Um I'm gonna read Black Metal Sin Booths, which is something that she and I wrote for um I don't know, I think I put it up on Facebook or something, but this is this really so nice that I wanted to read it. I put it in the junk merchants. Um okay. Tiny crumble cars track the transmission from a rusted out crucifixion. Black metal cops with spiky hats sew designer death labels, retro engineered to fit the rhizome internets. Pink bees' knot lips cover the rotten fruit, tongue with screaming stingers, flexed persecution. Internal burial ground inside which coffins are replaced with booby traps. Boobs are used for eyeballs. the Mammo cornhole reel, which is a play on words like it's corn. Now I can't say it. Coronal. I was trying to, anyway. FBI spies with my little fruit fly. Telescopes of mutation, spearing the black meat on the ultimate fork. You. Ice Ice maybe. Ashes to assholes. The whole shithouse goes up in name and shame, cooked in the bodysuit of a Mac the Knife waif. Wafers, tainted with poltergeist portals, enunciate true or false plays, aiming towards the next target. Sin booths conjoined forces to form the leading role. And the last stanza, I know that was Juliet. Sin booths conjoined forces to forces. I love the use of consonants. Well, it's also consonants and assonants. Sin booths conjoined forces to form the leading role. And she's so immaculate, right? Like every word is load bearing, as well as having so many levels of possible meaning. I just think she's great. I know that's not a controversial statement for me to say about Juliet Cook with you.
Oh
And
no,
I know
I
that,
think she's excellent.
yeah. So if you have anything else you'd like to read, and then maybe we'll wrap it up.
Well, let me take a look and see everything I keep trying to find. I don't seem to know where it's at. Um, but I'll find some here that and I don't even know what it will be, but I will find something. Um, but I do like working with Juliet Cook. I do like writing collaborative poetry with her, and I like what you and I have done together, and what the one that the three of us have done, and
Yeah,
I want to continue working on that sort of stuff. Um, and that's kind of the networking I was talking about, like with science and field biology and stuff.
yeah,
Um, that's how I mean, I have some poetry friends I've never met in person, you know,
yeah,
but but you know, it's really cool to be able to network and to actually have people that want to work and collaborate. And with Juliet Cook, man, you think you're going one direction and she always changes the direction on you in a
right,
collaborative club.
right,
And you're like, yeah, and then you're like, okay, now where do I
yeah,
go with this?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
she's like a psychedelic roller coaster or something. She'll just
and
leave.
then when it's done, I never know if it's any good or not. But
Yeah,
I'm not sure if we even have anything out there that we don't have published. We may have published everything that we've written together.
I
So
think possibly, yeah.
with her and I anyhow. So maybe apparently it works. You know,
Yeah,
um,
it's a magic. I never questioned it because it just seemed to happen automatically with us. And so and there's going to be a lot of of we're going to be all three of us are going to be well represented with the clown horror anthology. Floppy Shoes 3, Floppy Shoes Apocalypse 3, Grease Paint Inferno. Yeah, so what I think what I would love to do, and maybe we could do another three-way collaboration with or how about maybe you and I and Catfish McDaris could do something.
yeah, no, that'd be interesting. It really would. Now, I have a poem.
Oh,
I do
yay!
have a poem, and it's fairly long. Um,
No worries.
I've had a lot of people that don't think it's poetry. I guess they think it's just a prose piece, which sometimes for me it's hard to tell. What makes something poetry, what doesn't make it poetry. Now, of course, you know that I like psychedelica. I like weird fiction. I like horror, that sort of stuff. But you'll also probably figured out that I'm very into noir fiction, and I like authors like David Goodis, um, Jim Thompson,
Me too.
Charles Williford. Um, I like those types of guys. I like it when they kind of cross the line, but they don't just go entirely across the line.
Do you like what's is that the guy he wrote Killer on the Road, Jim something
I don't
Killer
know. Jim Thompson wrote "The Killer Inside Me."
yeah, I'm trying to think he was an LA guy. Um wrote Killer on the Road and name escapes me. It was Elroy, James Elroy.
Oh, okay. I've heard of him. I don't know that I've read his stuff. Uh, but I read a book called Cock. It's either Cockfight or Cockfight. I think that I really, really enjoyed, and
Oh
then
yeah, okay. Good.
then
Thank
I
you for
started reading
recommendation.
up on I started reading up on cockfighting and such to try to. I mean, I try to have some, in a lot of my stuff. I want to have some accuracy as far as geography,
Yeah,
historical or whatever. I mean, so I try to make things believable. Now,
yeah,
I always like this piece, but this is more of my noir stuff, and whether or not it's poetry or not, that's up to the reader to decide
yeah.
or the listener. Um, but I think you might like this. So it's called Cockfight. Rooster and Henny were simple Cajun folk. Rooster's off-white, grayish wife beater barely stretched over his beer belly. Henny's halter burst with double D flesh, her shorts shorter than Daisy Duke's. Rooster, a lazy, unemployed shanty bum, raised gamecocks and siphoned gas. Henny spent days slinging hash, nights tending bar, letting patrons oogle her breasts, hoping to collect extra tips. While Henny worked, Rooster stayed home, rolled his own, drank warm beer from the rundown fridge, and occupied himself with his gamecocks, trained his feathered warriors for bloody battle in the pits against competitors of grit and steel. Rooster was proud of his battle honed athletes, but he was most proud of Rusty, his red cock. Rusty was a most magnificent fowl, battle tested, ready for the big test, the battle Rooster bet Henny's farm on, the only thing she ever owned. Rusty was hooked or was booked to battle Oscar, the undisputed champion from the New Mexico cockfighting circuit, 11-0, and Henny with no idea of the collateral offered. Beater pickups, new Chevy trucks, and Cadillacs with burnished longhorns, plates that read Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, New Mexico, as well as Louisiana, parked at different angles surrounding the corrugated arena in nowhere, Louisiana. Roll your own cigs and whiskey flasks, pass through the crowd, pistol packing gamblers, place bets as low as a C note and as high as 20K on the fighting foul. Cigar chomping rednecks guzzle Schlitz, Texas oil tycoons involved in action place Texas sized bets on their favorites or find more exotic entertainment in a dilapidated trailer out back with a local honey trying to turn a quick buck. Roosters versus rooster, tenaciously to the death. Rabid brawls in the background, rich bitches scream like spatting barn cats, bitters riveted, bet on the bloodbath in the foreground as cock faces cock in the barbaric blood sport battle of beak and spur. Cigarette butts, aluminum cans, booze bottles litter the place. Outside grows a pile of dead and dying discarded gamecocks. Young boys chase each other with tangled innards of the defeated, while men stand by swearing, spitting tobacco, disinterested. Rooster struts proudly into the arena, sporting a new rusty plaid flannel shirt. Henny crowds near the front of the frenzied spectators in a form fitting black and white checkered dress. Betts mount as all attention focuses on the main event, the culminating carnage, the bloodlusting event, or excuse me, evening. Oscar, a splendid spectacle, trots out a most majestic black and white speckled cock. The incandescent light gleams menacingly off his razor sharp silver gaffs. His gold eyes craze blood, shot like a strung out junkie's. Cock faces cock, feathers, rusty, black, white, ruffled, ferociously spar. Shiny silver gaffs transform into feathered, blood covered, steely spikes of death. Cock's combs and wattles copiously bleed, baptizing front row deathmongers in a grisly collage of sticky crimson spray. Round one over, combatants collapse, completely exhausted. Rooster lifts Rusty up, watches him fall. Damn it! Lifts Rusty up again, and again Rusty crumples into the dust, too weak to continue. A third time Rooster lifts Rusty, and this time breathes into the bird's mouth, covering its grungy beak with his own mouth, keeps pressure with his thumb over the whole of the torn trachea. Slowly, Rusty's lungs inflate and deflate as Rooster artificially breathes for his nearly defeated jungle fowl. Round two begins as two crippled cocks joust with renewed strength. Death is imminent, victory fleeting, not glorious. Oscar slashes and Gaff nicks jugular, and Rusty rocks back. Flapping wildly, Rusty drives his armored spurs through Oscar's breastbone, straight to the heart, collapses in death, covered by the blood splattered black and white speckled corpse of his victor, both roosters dead, unceremoniously tossed onto the ever growing pile of bloody, dismembered gamecocks, a symbolic representation of life's uselessness. Heavy fisted men approach as Rooster's eyes dart back and forth. Sign it, they insist. Sign what? Henny inquires. The deed to your farm, Henny. The deed to your farm. I bet the farm. Sign the deed or I'm a dead man. Their heads shake in deathly affirmation. You bastard, Rooster, you damn bastard. That was my daddy's farm, and you bet it on that crap eating dead bird. What a selfish jerk. Henny grabs a bloodied hatchet from the chopping stump. I'll show you, Rooster. I'm going to hurt you this time. Henny swings a glancing blow across Rooster's forehead. Rooster and Henny stumble into the pit of steel and grit. The crowd excitedly surrounds them, placing bets just as if another cockfight had erupted, raucously cheering the mad couple on. Rooster flails his rust-clad arms like flapping wings. Henny, checkered black and white, crazed by bloodlust and revenge, drives the hatchet home again and again and again, forcing Rooster back until he falls, collapsing, nearly bludgeoned to death. Blood profusely flowing from his temple. Rooster gasps, finds it hard to catch his breath, coughs up pink, soapy foam spilling through perforated trachea, gets up, stumbles and falls, gets up again, reaches for Henny's neck and falls again, feels something hard and steely in the dust, grabs onto a discarded pair of rusty gaffs, long ones, drives him forward as Henny buries the axe straight into his checkered heart, or into her checkered heart, I'm sorry. Rusty Rooster crumples, falls beneath the dead weight of his black and white checkered hand.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. You write so well. I think you're marvelous. I think we would, we could have a you and Catfish on the show again. Um, that would be great. I did this. Well, I tried to a little sketch of you. So like I've drawn I dropped my guess. Well, yeah, so your writing is extremely vivid, it's extremely explicit, it's visual, and it's you also have the sound. So you have the image, you have the sound. What more do you need? It's poetry, right? So you have for your ears and for your inner vision. I mean, you have the objective correlative. You have, you know, what evokes the emotion. That's very, very cool. And it reminds me a lot of cat stuff, right? I mean, I mean, it sounds, it could be a cat poem. I like his density. He's given me a whole bunch of stuff to chop up. He just says, "Hey, Alex, chop this up." I'm like, okay, so I'll take like a chapter, or he'll, and actually have to get back to it because he keeps sending me stuff to chop up. And so we could maybe I could take one of his pieces, I could chop it up, and I could send it over to you, and you could take a whack at it, and then maybe then we could I could publish it on the Small Bear Review.
Uh-huh. Well, that, possibly, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I have to think more about it or understand more about exactly what you're, you know.
Yeah. Well, it sort of gets easier once you've done some of them because he'll send me like a piece that he's already written, but maybe it's only like 2 pages. And then I will chop it up and sort of insert some more of my stuff. But basically, it's more or less editing for me because he already has the story. And then maybe I could send it to you, or we could create something new, and we'll see how it works. But I think that there's a potential for you and I and he to collaborate. Well,
Well, one thing that Catfish did, he published, I think, kind of self-published a little collection of poems about Frida Kahlo.
yeah,
Okay, and I got one of them. I mean, I subscribed to it or whatever, got it. Thought
yeah,
it was really cool. And then there's this there's a publisher called Scurf P Publishing that publishes an anthology of poetry every year. And they asked me to be a guest editor one
oh
year,
wow,
and I made it. I mean, I made it like the smallest volume they've had. I wanted to really narrow my focus down.
yeah,
I contacted Catfish and I said, "How would you like to have several of your poems from the Frida Kahlo in this publication?" And he said,
yeah,
"Yeah." So I republished several of those. I don't think I've republished all of them. I don't remember, but I published several of them
yeah,
in this. It's actually the men who made bonfires is the name of it, and that's from a piece by um um is it what J. Compton, I think.
okay,
It's a, but anyhow, um, so that was another thing that I had done with Catfish, and
yeah,
then we promoted that, and so I had Catfish on the show that 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 we did that promoted that book,
yeah,
the Men Who Made Bonfires. Um, so yeah, and when I'm more than pleased to work on stuff, anything associated with Catfish. Yeah, absolutely.
cool,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but it's a small world because um, it's amazing how you see a name and then you start finding they start cropping up in the similar places that that you're looking that I'm looking at, and
Yeah.
I come to realize maybe there aren't that many people that actually write the type of stuff that I write.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I think it was like Ben Arthur Smith from Horace Lee's Trash who that there's an interview with Catfish, if I'm not mistaken, or vice versa. I think he wrote a foreword to one of Ben Arthur Smith's who founded Horace Lee's Trash in Australia. And I've got a new 80,000 word collection of dark satire short stories that some of them are flash fiction that Catfish is writing the forward to. So I just love them so much, and I know you do too. And so there's definitely a lot of potential there.
Yeah. And my thing is I want to be published in a lot of different venues,
Yeah,
and so but some of your publishers or editors, whatever, you get to where you almost feel like you know them personally, you know.
yeah.
And I've talked with Catfish on the phone before. You know, I asked him for permission to read one of his poems at a poetry reading, and I made a recording. I think send it to him. He liked
Oh
it.
wow, cool.
You know, just um, it, sort of when I was growing up, I never thought these sorts of things would be even possible.
Yeah, me, I
So there's a lot of stuff I don't like about the internet and social media and whatnot, but then there's some pretty cool things too.
yeah, I mean to be able to just like do this or to be able to access to be able to have a live stream, for example, or to just to talk to each other, to communicate over distance and time and form actual kind of bonds and more than just network. That's the reason that I wanted to do Nocturnicorn is because so many people publish with this very kind of a cold-blooded what passes for professionalism for me is garbage. You know, I think if you're not having human, I mean, all I'm not saying is that I'm not saying that I don't have just purely professional relationships with some of my authors. They'll write me a story and I pay them an honorarium and split, royalties. But people wonder, or I'm sure that they do wonder, how I'm able to get like literal rock stars. And it's all who you know, right? It's
Sure.
all who you know. Having been a music journalist for more than a quarter of a century, having worked with some of the biggest, you know, publications in metal, including Metal Maniacs, which was the magazine that, bands like Metallica read, right, back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and that's how I know Jarbo. And as for David J. Haskins, that was just a fluke because I knew that David was a self-described Burroughs obsessive. And so he has this um, email portal through he's a very accessible guy. And he does a lot of DJ stuff. And he's also an artist. So he had recently had an art exhibit and he lives in LA area. And so I just wrote him, not thinking anything was going to come of it because he's a huge rock star. But he responded, he said, "Oh yeah, here's something for you." Right. And it was an original poem about Burroughs, the infamous William Tell incident, right? Where he shoots his wife in the head not meaning to, but of course she dies, and it almost felt like it was fated, or it was some awful inevitability that created this psychic wound in his soul that he had to work out for the rest of his life, right? This devastating, devastating, devastating. Talk about grief, but beyond grief. I mean, beyond mere, no, I mean, at least with grief, when somebody dies, you can you can still salvage the memories, right? But to know that you're responsible for somebody's death,
Right. It
and,
makes it
and-
more difficult.
right, and the kind of almost surreal conditions under which this took place. Have you seen the film Naked Lunch by Cronenberg?
I haven't, and I gotta admit, I tried to read Naked Lunch, and
Yeah.
it went beyond that line that I don't like to go beyond.
Okay. Fair
I
enough.
read Junkie, and I really liked Junkie a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, I can see why. I would recommend Queer too is very good. It's
And
it's
I don't know if I have that or not. I might have it.
it's much more linear. I mean, when he started out, he was doing these. See, he had this young man he was infatuated with, and he wrote this. He would do these routines that turned into the sort of like these routines that wound up in Naked Lunch. See, if you approach Naked Lunch as not like this formidable sort of incomprehensible text, but he's telling like these raunchy, horrible stories to because he was in love with this young man. He was trying to get his attention in a really, I don't know if you've ever done this, but sometimes when you know somebody is repulsed by you and you like you keep doing the things that you know turns them off, and in a way it's almost like self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know if
Right.
that
No,
makes any
I
sense. Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't. I just had the expectation that I would like Lake at
Yeah.
lunch.
Yeah. I know Juliet Cook is a big fan. Yeah.
I didn't enter it thinking it wouldn't be approachable
Right.
because the first thing I read was Junkie,
Yeah.
and I was intrigued by it. I thought it was
Yeah.
pretty interesting, but I have thousands of books that I want to read.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, I have a major library,
Yeah.
and I started reading it, and I'm like, I don't want to read it.
That's fair enough.
You
Yeah.
know, and if other people like it, that's fine.
Yeah.
I it's not like I read it and I can say, well, it's boring,
Yeah.
like I can say about the other things I said. All I can say is I just didn't like it, and I didn't read it all. So I mean, I can't, in fairness, say what I would have thought. I mean, I didn't read enough of it but I just it was I like things that, like I said, that kind of push the envelope, that maybe step across that line of what I would consider acceptability.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
what do you mean by
because I
acceptability?
write that way a little bit.
What's acceptability? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you have to understand my upbringing and my own, which I don't like to get into very much, but
Okay, that's
my own
fine.
spirituality and faith and stuff. Uh, a lot of the circles that I'm in would find, some of what I even read tonight terribly objectionable. Okay. And they would not be reading the things I do. And,
Yeah.
you know, and they wouldn't do the stuff that I do. Um, um, and they certainly wouldn't read The Naked Lunch. And I don't know what they would have thought of Junkie. I liked Junkie. I thought Junkie was really well done. So,
Yeah.
um, and I wouldn't be adverse to reading Queer. I mean,
Right.
I just I put together a list one year of what I was going to read that year, and
Yeah.
Naked Lunch was on it, and I grabbed my copy of Naked Lunch, and I I don't like a lot of profanity
Right. That's fair.
over and over and over. I
Yeah.
just don't. Um, I don't mind profanity if it makes sense. It's just like watching a movie. I don't want to see a lot of nudity, but if it makes sense,
Right.
then I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with it. It's just things need to, I think things need to have a purpose. Otherwise, it's just exploiting something. Well, maybe that's the purpose.
That is often the purpose. Yeah.
And in some cases, I might think, okay, that makes sense. Like one of
Right.
my favorite movies is A Clockwork Orange.
Me too.
I love that movie.
I love that
I
movie. Yeah.
love the scene where the guy has to meet the blonde bombshell and she's topless and he wants to touch her, but he can't. He feels sick. I think that's an amazing scene.
Me too. Yeah.
But when he goes into the record store, buys a record or whatever, and takes those two girls back to his apartment, and they're listening to whatever they're listening to,
William Tell Overture.
Kubrick has that rapid,
Yeah.
sped up sex scene.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand. It did nothing for the movie. I would have just cut it. I don't, or I would have slowed it down if I wanted it in there.
Yeah.
To me, it was just extraneous. It didn't need to be there. So
Well,
it's
well,
not like you can't have nudity. It's just
well,
it needs to
well,
make sense to me.
can I give my own take on this?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think that was to show just the mindless hedonism, pure, just raw, just fucking, and I'm sorry to use the curse word, but just he's this is to contrast with what's to come. This is to show that he is completely without any sort of conscience. He's picking up these young girls, and they have this three-way sex scene. And also, if you think about it, the way that Kubrick keys in certain unusual choices of song cues, music cues with the different scenes, just the same way that he had the Blue Danube Waltz in 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? The way he had also Sprach Zarathustra, also in the beginning of 2001, how he had the William Tell Overture with the two girls, when they have that
yeah,
threesome, and also then the Wendy Carlos music, which was the first kind of synthesizer music when she did uh uh what was it called? There were is basically electronic versions of like Bach and Beethoven.
I can understand what you're saying,
Yeah,
but to me, it's I can understand that.
yeah,
I still think it made the movie better. If anything, I still felt like it just distracted. But again, it's one of my favorite movies,
yeah,
and but that's just one part of the movie I just didn't really appreciate.
yeah.
And but that doesn't mean I have to appreciate everything,
Of course not. Of course not. That's
And
Yeah, you get it. You get into well. That's something I wanted to discuss because we live in this era which you and I. Well, you're like a year older than I am, but we're basically the same age, and we grew up with most of our adult lives. We didn't have something called social media. Most of our adult lives, we didn't have something called the internet, right? As I remember,
correct.
I don't know if you grew up, we had manual typewriters. So like my first typewriter was a manual typewriter. I remember, oh,
I I hit I hit 50 words a minute on a manual typewriter.
yes, right. And I remember when I was going to I went to my undergrad degree at UC Davis, and I remember I had a Selectric 2, and I thought this is the state of the art, baby. I'm really rocking it, right? I felt like I was just I felt like, oh, I'm this is like being Hunter S. Thompson. Wow, man. This was a beautiful, beautiful instrument, writing instrument. And remember, we'd use like like you'd have these little strips, these corrector ribbon strips, right? You put them
Yeah.
in, right? Corrector ribbons. My God. So this amazingly weird phenomena of, see, I went through I had my my first novel was published by New Line Cinema and Black Flame Press, 2005. And it was published, I think it was published in 30 countries. And it's like the kind of book that you could pick up in an airport, right? You could go to an airport and it's like pick up a copy of these books. It was the official tie-in novel to the Jason X. And they had like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and and a whole bunch of Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, right? This is New Line Cinema stuff. So it was the official books, the official spin-off books. So that was 2005. And then I published The Death Jazz in 2012. I had all these amazing blurbs by people like John Shirley, who created Cyberpunk and wrote The Crow, the movie The Crow.
Which I liked a lot.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's a because it's got that noir thing going
But
as
yeah, it does. And of course, I like nature and I like crows. I like corvids. And I like that perspective coming from the crow's eye. There was a lot of cool things going on in that film.
yes, very definitely. It's one of my personal favorites. I love the way it's constructed. It's a complex movie. It's a disciplined movie. It's not a pro revenge movie. And if people read my interview with Shirley, which I published on my blog called The Old Gods Return, it's very much it problematizes vengeance and violence. And I love it. I love it. But what was I? What was I? Oh, yeah. So, you know, I didn't want to sign up for um, social media at all because I had friends who sort of pressured me to get into it. It's like, oh, this is the next great thing. So it's like, well, yeah, but it's all y'all do is you post pictures of what you ate, right? You post,
Well, yeah, I see a lot of people put a bunch of angst on it, and I don't necessarily want that. I see people put a bunch of politics on there. I see people blocking one another because of their political standpoints.
yeah,
I'm not, most of what I put on there are things that I'm accomplishing with my students or whatever,
yeah,
or pictures of stuff I've taken in nature or whatever,
yeah.
things like that. Right now, yeah, every week I'm putting up a little information about a movie from my personal list of the 100 greatest movies of all time, which is at about 108 or something now.
What are okay? So what are your top five favorites films?
Well, I don't know right now where the ranking is,
Okay,
uh, but um, um, let me tell you what movies I put up so far.
okay.
Today, I just put up Peeping Tom as one of my top movies of all time.
Powell, right? That's Powell.
Well, it's a British film from
Right,
1962.
right. But Powell, right? Something Powell was the director, I believe,
I'm not sure.
and it
And
got a lot
I
of trouble.
really like that.
Yeah,
Uh, but now I put I did not watch this movie for over 40 years because I didn't think I'd like it. I thought it'd be
yeah,
stupid. I thought it out, not Peeping Tom, but the second movie that I put up. And I had people that acted like I was crazy for putting it up, and then I had people that liked it. And that's what I'm saying. I walk, across, I mean, I have to move from one paradigm shift to another all the time. Um, but a movie that I did not think I would like, so I refused to watch it for over 40 years. And when I watched it, I wished I'd produced it. I wish I directed it.
yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I love that movie. I mean,
I was
so
I was
much.
so amazed. I was like, huh? I really thought I'd be stupid. I thought I would think it was hokey. I just thought there's no way I'm going to like this. So I put off watching it. And when I watched it, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really good. And then, I put it out there as one of my top, what I consider one of the greatest
Yeah.
100 movies of all time. And people are like, that's a bunch of garbage and whatnot. I'm like, did you watch it? You
Right.
know, um, and then I put the Wizard of Oz up there,
Yep.
and then I can't ever remember the name of the movie. I put it up there. I really like it. It's not Pale Rider, but it's a movie that sounds like something about on a horse. I forget. It stars Lee Van Cleef. It's a spaghetti western.
Is it on a pale horse or
On a horse. I can't remember.
because I love spaghetti westerns, man.
Yeah,
We
well, this
have
one
a
is
show about
really,
spaghetti westerns.
really amazing. Well, just go to my Facebook page, and I started with that western on the last week of December, and now throughout the whole year, every
Right.
week I'm going to put information about a new movie that's on my list, and then I'll give you an idea, And I'm trying to.
As a
I won't
matter
put
of
all the
fact,
100 some, but
I wrote this. It's called Bad Sunset or A Fistful of Eyeballs.
oh,
It's a bizarro western.
yeah, well, sounds interesting. Well, and
Thank you.
and I do like the Fistful of Dollars, and I
Yeah.
love Clint Eastwood. I think he's great.
I
Uh,
actually, the actor Billy Bob Thornton. Uh,
yeah, I
yeah.
watched him in what did I see? What's the movie he was in? The famous
Well,
one.
the big one was Sling Blade.
Yes, I liked that a lot.
Well, my friend Emily Frank, who I did the first show of the season, I guess we call it, the Small Bear Show, and she and Lynn Bronstein and G.R. Tomini were on also with us. She is the web mistress, I guess that's the term for Billy Bob Thornton, and so she's going to give this book to him personally because I
Wow.
inscribed it to him. Wow, and I'm wow, right? It's like wow, it's Billy Bob Thornton. It's one of my heroes.
Well, I sure liked Sling Blade. Um, Apocalypse Now is one of my favorites.
Me too. Me too. Do you have the 4 hour
I
Apocalypse Now
I
redo?
watch Apocalypse Now redo,
Yeah, me too. Me too. I actually did a
and
whole. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, I just it's an amazing film. What's Sheen? Which I always get Martin and Charlie Sheen confused.
Yeah, Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen was the protagonist. He played the character of that was in the novella.
Willard.
It was Willard, which was originally Marlowe in the Joseph Conrad.
Okay, so I think everything that he does is fantastic. I think he's, in my mind, the two most underrated actors
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
if it's Martin Sheen, and the other one, I think Woody Harrelson. To
I do
me,
too.
those are the two most underrated actors of all time.
Me
I mean,
too. Me too.
they're amazing. If you watch them, they're
Yeah.
really amazing. But and it's not like people don't like them, but they don't get the acclaim or the applaud that I think they
I,
deserve.
I think it's because they're so good and it's subtle. I mean, they're so good that you don't even see the whatever the skill, the actorly skill. You just see the results. And I think the same thing is true for because I was doing, I learn a lot about people by drawing them. And when I was drawing Billy Bob Thornton as his character in Sling Blade, I realized that what he'd done was create this mask. He'd done almost like the character is a complete mask, and he's like this. like that. And and he sort of much like I've heard that David Bowie was able to transform himself into, whatever this persona, and he was just completely I mean, you would think that he was mildly mentally challenged. Just the way that he sculpted that character out of his body, out of his movements, out of his facial expressions, and how his voice sounded. And I think that was stunning. You know who really inspired him or like put him on the road to doing that movie? Billy Wilder. Billy Wilder, because Billy Bob was he was like living in his car or something, and he would do these odd jobs around town. And somebody said there was a going to be a party in the Hollywood Hills, which are now, unfortunately, they're gone. Like I've spent a lot of, I did went to a lot of parties in the Hollywood Hills, let me tell you, back in the day. But and so they said, okay, so there's going to be some major movie stars there. All you want you to do is just be a waiter, okay? He was like, okay, I'm doing my best Billy Bob. Okay. Um, that was actually a really good Billy Bob impression. Okay, I'll do it. And so he drives up there, and there's a bunch of major name movie stars. When I lived in LA for 20 years, and movie stars, you just bump into movie stars. It's no big deal. There's a whole LA kind of attitude where you don't make a big deal about it. Like when I was hanging out at the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and people like Prince would show up, and you just sort of ignore them. And the guy who played Leatherface from the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre came up and started talking to me and my friend who worked with Motorhead. And so anyway, back to my story. So Billy Bob is serving. He's a waiter. He's at this party in Hollywood Hills, and he starts, this short, little Jewish man starts asking him, "So are you a with a thick German accent? Are you do you want to be an actor?" And it's like, "How'd you know? How'd you know?" He's like, "Well, because all of you guys want to be actors." He said, "Do you write?" And then Billy Bob said, "Well, yeah, I write a little bit." And he said, "Okay, do it. Write yourself a movie." And so Thornton wrote Sling Blade, and he made it for, I don't know how he got the financing, but he made it for about $3 million. It made more than $40 million. $40 million. And that's pure profit. And they won the Academy Award. And so, um, yeah, I mean, it's just amazing that I kind of stumbled on the fact that my friend Amelie, um, is, she's been his web mistress for like more than a decade. And so we were talking, and we were just chatting online, and she said, "Oh, I gotta go. I gotta get Billy Bob to the View." Right? And I'm like, who's Billy Bob? She says, "Billy Bob Thornton." I was like, "Oh my gosh." And that was the same day. So then I tune in to the View and watch him live. And then that night he was on the Stephen Colbert Show. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." He just seems he was a good friend of Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead as well. So that is, beyond belief that, and my friend who worked with Motorhead recommended that I send him Bad Sunset because um, he's got that whole Western thing going on. So anyway, that's a long story short. About Billy Bob Thornton. But I think it's really cool that everybody has somebody who says, you know what you should do, and then that leads them onto something else. And you and I have both had opportunities, you with Juliet Cook and some other people, and I with some people like Arthur Graham from Horsley's Trash and with Juliet. And it really makes a difference in a very soulful way to connect with other human beings as opposed to fighting and arguing with other people over some nonsense, whether or not we voted for the same what you know what does it matter? I mean, I would much rather talk to you about beetles and um the the burying beetle and your work as an educator and a naturalist. It's very interesting. You're a very interesting person, and your writing is really good. And so this is the way that life used to function. It was a lot more, it was sort of like a whole food experience as opposed to a processed food experience where everything is mediated through this this grid where you get online and it's like you just express an opinion and about 20 people dogpile you for just saying hello and they say, well, what's your problem? Why are you saying hello? Well, I don't, well, F you and whatever. And it just deteriorates very quickly. And I never had this problem ever, ever, ever in real life. I had problematic relationships. And everybody has problematic relationships, or you wouldn't be human. But I never had people behaving in such an extraordinarily weird fashion towards me, and it infected my actual real life relationships. I've lost so many actual in real life friends because of social media. It seems to be
Yeah.
poison people.
No, I know. I understand that, and that's part of why I don't put a lot of stuff out there because it it doesn't matter. My position on a lot of things really doesn't matter. I'm not trying to change your mind or somebody else's
Right.
mind,
Yeah, yeah,
so I don't need to say anything about it because um, whether you agree or disagree with
yeah,
me on something doesn't matter. There's a lot more that matters that's more important to me than just having that relationship. And I don't
yeah,
want that destroyed over somebody's perception of my truth,
yeah,
And I've learned tolerance. Uh, Um, I don't have to agree, but what I should do, I think, my personal philosophy is to gain understanding, not to
yeah.
gain agreement. I want to understand Alex S. Johnson.
I want
I
to
don't have to
understand
agree with you.
Daniel
But
G. Snethen, and I don't necessarily have to agree with you. And I find your hot takes refreshing. I mean, and we could have a separate um, conversation off of the air about the Great Gatsby, but also we don't. Just the fact that you express a certain opinion about one of my favorite novels of all time, which I return to like a religious experience, The Great Gatsby. And you say, well, it's boring. And I say, okay, well, that's Daniel G. Sneathan. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Punch you? Like
no,
block you? Like say, okay, that's war. We're going to be at war now.
and I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy for F. Scott Fitzgerald. Somebody actually really likes his novel.
Oh, I see what you did there. Oh man. Actually that novel was wildly unpopular when it came out and it got hammered by the critics. They loved his first book, This Side, no, it's not This Side of Paradise. Or was it? Was it This Side of Paradise, which was
I don't know. And
yeah,
I liked F. Scott Fitzgerald, and
yeah,
because I'm going to tell you something. I, I got to say this:
Yeah.
War of the Worlds, horrible book.
Okay.
Horrible. It's
Okay, here
so
we go
boring.
again. Here we go again. I
It's
love that book,
just,
man.
how can you read it? It's unreadable.
Hey,
But if you pick up The Island of Dr. Moreau,
okay, now we're fucking
it's an
talking,
amazing book.
right?
Same guy
Same guy.
wrote both. I'm like, everything he's supposed to do as a writer, he did in The Island of Dr. Moreau. Everything you're not supposed to do, he did in War of the Worlds.
Well,
Now, do I
speaking,
like the radio broadcast with Orson Welles? Yeah. Do I like the Tom Cruise movie? Yeah. Do I like H.G. Wells's The War of the Worlds? No.
oh, well, I love H.G. Wells any way you can cook him or fry him. But speaking of hot takes, I actually appreciated the Richard Stanley. It's considered one of the worst films ever made. The Island of Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando. And I
And I
think
don't
that's
think I've
actually,
seen it.
and it's got Feruza Balk in it. And I think it's pretty damn interesting. I mean, it's an interesting failure. It's an interesting wreckage, you know. But for my money, it all we wouldn't have to agree on anything. But I like the fact that as a sort of what do you call it? As a like a reference set. We entirely agree on Apocalypse Now. If nothing else, Apocalypse Now, for my money, is the greatest film, one of the greatest films ever made. Also, I have a very interesting personal connection with that film. And I may have discussed with this you earlier, and I probably did, so I beg your, indulgence if I repeat this. Okay, so this guy is a stiff teddy bear, right? I
Okay.
think we talked about this earlier.
No, I heard you say you had a Stice teddy bear, but other than that, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, hence the Small Bear Show.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so the origin story, my origin story of how I earned this moniker, so cute, man, is that when I was born on Halloween Day, 1966, and my mom was working for the Cal State San Francisco State in the film purchasing department, where she came across a film called The Language of Faces by a guy named John Cordy. And he made it for the Friends Service Committee, the Quakers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's online. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. It's an anti-war film and it's an anti-hate film. It's about tolerance. It's about tolerance.
What's the name of the film?
It's called The Language of Faces.
Okay, I might be interested in watching that.
And it is available on YouTube. And so I think she had a friend who introduced her to um, a woman named Beulah Chang, who is an artist and art dealer who lives in Mill Valley. And I contacted her too more recently. She was married to John Cordy. Now, John Cordy and she were married at the time that they sent me a stiff teddy bear, not this one, but 58 years ago, they sent me a stiff teddy bear, a larger stiff teddy bear. And I've only recently discovered who they were. John Cordy, okay, he made this film, The Language of Faces. He started out working for George Lucas. He made about
Okay.
15 films with George Lucas for George Lucas, and then he had this idea for a mobile. Film Studio. That's Korty. And there's an article online. Lucasfilm remembers John Cordy. And he had this idea for what if you had, instead of a sort of a static film, you know, studio where you had to remain on the Hollywood set or whatever, you could have a portable set, right? And you could take it around, and seems like second nature. We don't even think about it because of John Cordy, such an innovator. And he said, okay, so he created this mobile film studio, and that led directly to for THX 1138, which was the first major feature by George Lucas, and the creation of Omni Zoetrope, which was later became American Zoetrope, which produced all these movies that we just think, oh wow, um, like Koyaanisqatsi, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, like Apocalypse Now. This guy, the guy who sent me the Smol Bear did all of those movies. He was the DP on a movie called The Candidate with Robert Redford, which was made by one of my dad's really close friends, a guy named Michael Ritchie, who also directed a movie called The Bad News Bears,
Okay, I
right?
remember that.
So the
And
Bad,
they had a TV show too.
yes, exactly. They had the Bad News Bears TV show. And then he went on to direct something called Caravan of Courage, an Ewok adventure, which was based on a story by George Lucas, which was based on Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? And so in the same year that Return of the Jedi came out, I think it was 1983, John Cordy also had a film out through Lucasfilm called Twice Upon a Time, which was an animated film, also had a bear character using a lot of very, very innovative animation techniques. And so then he went on to make movies like the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. For TV, he made Go Ask Alice. He did a lot of Sesame Street stuff. And this guy, so so to me, it was a really amazing coincidence that the guy, first of all, who gets a stuffed teddy bear from an Academy Award winning director, you know, so I was just when I found out about who this guy was and what he'd done, that he was a pioneer. Um, I was just really also my great grandfather was a man named Herbert Eugene Bolton, who was one of the foremost historians of the United States. He's the guy who kind of opened up the Southwest for American history. And he was awarded a medal by the King of Spain and the Pope. So this guy was, he was really groundbreaking. And with California, we have the the Bruins. We have, it's the Golden Bear state, right? So there's all these kind of interesting kind of bear connections that I have. That's the origin story of,
The Small Bear.
Small Bear. But don't you think that's cool? I just
Oh yeah, yeah. I
that's just
think it's interesting.
I just and so through being open, being receptive, not because my parents, it was like grew up in our kind of spirituality is very much based on Eastern religion, and we are not Christian, but we value the teachings of Christ, and being open to other people, other belief systems.
Well, I'm gonna make a statement here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm of the opinion that there that a lot of people who claim not to be Christian act in a manner far more Christ-like than many of the people who profess Christianity. And I would rather, deal with people who act in a certain manner than those who merely profess it. Some of the most Christian people I know seem to, to others, they wouldn't even claim they're Christian, and others would say, "Oh, you can't be Christian because of this, this, and this." All I know is I'm not the judge, and but I deal with people based on how they act, how they behave, and again, I'm tolerant, and I hope they're tolerant of me, and I try not to be judgmental. But again, I think uh, some of the worst problems Christianity has are the Christians who
Wow, yeah.
profess and but don't really live it.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
When the greatest commandment is to love one another.
Right. It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah, and if you don't do that, then are you really Christian?
Yeah. Yeah, and not to get political, but there's a lot of people now have sort of they profess Christianity and they use it and they weaponize it towards political gains, which is exactly what Christ was talking about when he talked about the hypocrites and the Pharisees, and that there was going to be false prophets. And I think we see, and not again, not to be political, and certainly, you know, I won't say his name, but there's a guy who's a publisher, an indie publisher who's published a lot of my, like about 15 of my stories. We worked together for 10 years or more, and I didn't have any problem with the fact that he's a Republican. Okay. I was like, okay, so what? One of my best friends is a Republican. He's not a real close friend, but a guy named Hal Bodner um is a Republican, and he's he doesn't agree with all of their platform and their candidates. But the most important thing to me has always been, okay, so I will read about Jesus. I like thinking about Jesus. I like the musical Godspell. I really love that musical. And it makes me, and I have a picture of Christ up outside my door here. And I think a lot about, okay, so when I go, walk around the house and I think, okay, can I talk to Jesus like you would talk to another person? Could I look Jesus in the eye and say, if he was real, because I think he is real, if is to say, hey, my friend, what's going on with this world, right? And to be able to look at him and say, I'm doing my best. I'm really within my constraints to not be, at the very least, not be um, a burden, not be harmful to people. At the very least, I can say, well, I'm innocuous. I aim to be innocuous to other people. And also, I struggle with reactivity because when you're attacked, the tendency is to sort of, you know, try to punch back.
It
And
is. That's a natural thing.
I
That's
see,
that's difficult to overcome within because it being treated a certain way elicits a response that's almost automatic and not premeditated.
right. And and it's also a lot of it is as a biologist, I mean, a lot of this is hardwired into our DNA. We're sort of, fight or flight, the adrenaline response, the cortisone response, and it's sort of like, you want to like, at some Paleolithic level, you want to strike somebody with a you know pitch blend axe or something, and hit them in
Right.
the skull, and you know, and so I watch myself flooded with these drugs. Really, they're drugs, right? And then I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? I be and I watch myself in perfect consciousness and awareness behaving in the exact same manner in retribution, thinking that I'm righteous when I'm not. It was just pure malice and darkness. And so then I say, whoa, Alex, you gotta just do something but walk away, but do something but walk away because you're not helping yourself.
You know, it's not about, okay, first of all, I want to say you shouldn't lower yourself to somebody else's, but also it's not about being super uprighteous and looking down and seeing yourself as far greater than them. It's just, if you know that it's wrong, um you you the best example you can really show someone is, I hate to say it, or maybe I don't hate to say it, I don't know, it is this idea of turning the other cheek.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
And when people see that and they start reflecting on that, and if you're not acting like you're holier than thou, people start to recognize maybe there's something to who you are, and maybe they want, to think about that and see if, I don't know if I help people be better people. At least I certainly hope I don't help them to be worse people, you know.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. I love that. I love those poems. I love you, and I love your just kind of your your immersive. Do you like I was reference Thoreau. I mean, just
I remember reading Emerson and Thoreau in college, and I remember, talking about transcendentalism,
yeah,
and I didn't really understand it. And all the other college students acted like they did. And I kind of called them to task in class, I think. I said, you guys all act like you know what this means, but you don't. Tell me, what does it mean? They couldn't tell me, you know. you know. Um, so maybe if I were to go back and read Thoreau and Emerson and those guys now, maybe I'd have more of appreciation for, I probably might like on Walden Pond, or Walden Pond. I mean, um, but as we age, as we read more, as we have more life experiences, we gain, hopefully, we gain,
hopefully, right?
and knowledge. And, um, in high school, I tried to read Dracula. I couldn't approach it because I think it was because it was written in a diary
Yeah,
form. And then, but I kept coming back to it because I knew I gotta like this. I know I'm going to like this, but I just couldn't
yeah.
get into it. And then finally, I was teaching in Wilder, Idaho, young teacher, and I decided to read Dracula, and I couldn't wait to get home. And every evening, and I read Dracula by candlelight,
Oh, nice.
and it was amazing.
Oh my God.
And to me, now I remember you mentioned something about a religious experience. Maybe it was the Great Gatsby or something. For me, one of the most religious experiences that I actually had
That's
was reading
beautiful, man.
Dracula.
That's so
And
beautiful.
and people are like, what do you mean? How could that be? And I'm like, well, I couldn't help but feel bad and sorry for Dracula because the book doesn't explain how he became who he was. All we know is he is what he is, and he's true to who he is. And if he wants to survive, he can do nothing but what he's doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he'll cease to exist. And who among us wants to cease to exist? And other people were on a holy quest, to rid the world of this evil. There are very few authors that I actually think really understand how to write stuff that's really truly scary. And one of them is Bram Stoker, and
Yeah.
I've read like three of his novels that
Yeah.
fit. Um, and it just, I do like, there's a few others that I've read that give me that same sort of experience, maybe. Um, but for me, that was really a turning point when I read that by candlelight. It was just totally immersive into that.
Right. Yeah. And some of them, I mean, I know Catfish has so many experiences that I will never have, and I just I don't really feel any envy because not that I would, because I've had some really interesting life experiences, but some of my favorite life experiences are with just reading. Most of them have been just reading. And I would go out to like I forced myself for several years. Well, the fact that I spent so much time in like West Hollywood, going to rock clubs and hanging out with rock stars and stuff, that was super fun, don't get me wrong. But all of it, I always felt that it was redeemed by transforming it into words, because words last. Words kind of set things in stone, and then you can return to them, and there's a kind of a majesty to words where we get them just right. And then that book or that movie or that song is going to stay with you for the rest of your life. And you can return to it like I return to books like Of Human Bondage, W. Somerset Maugham, return to Madame Bovary, return to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, return to a lot of Charles Bukowski because it's very soulful. And no matter how many times I read it, I get something new out of it. What are those books for you?
Well, uh, I really like Treasure Island.
Treasure Island is pretty, pretty, pretty cool. Yeah.
I read, I've read it several times. I really love A Call of the Wild.
Me too. Jack London.
I
So
really love that.
good.
I've read Tarzan of the Apes several times.
Yeah.
Um, you know, returning back, I'm trying to think.
Have you
Uh,
ever have you ever read Deliverance by James Dickey?
I have not, but it's one of my movies on my top 100 list.
It's I mean he was a poet, and the novel is like poetry.
The movie I think is fantastic. Um, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff. But see, I don't know. To me, that's connected to like a lot of what I just shared tonight. I mean, Deliverance, that movie. I mean, it's not that much different. The type of people in it than in Cockfighter.
Yeah.
Or even the Kinnickinnick Avenue killings.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of like to a certain point extent that CD, and I've seen I've seen and been in situations that are kind of scary. Um, I've probably seen a lot more than a lot of people have, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't live in some of those scary areas, but I've certainly have had certain experiences, and I've had to um, just a lot of, and then that's one of the reasons why I write poetry is I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget what happened. And so one way of preserving it, like you were talking about, is in words. So, I woke up, I think I was probably crying, weeping. Knightley was talking to me or something in my sleep. And I had to write that night of the lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
When I went to bed, I wasn't planning on writing it at that point, anyhow. I mean, I maybe knew I would eventually write one, but
Yeah.
I, I just woke up and I don't know. It was like he was talking to me, and I had to put it down. And so I say I wrote that poem, but in many respects, I really feel Knightley wrote that poem.
Yeah.
And I sent it to a few places that don't comment on it. They didn't want it. I honestly was shocked because I think it potentially it could be the best poem I've written. It all depends on what you like, but I mean, there's so much rawness, realness to that. And but I did send it to Yellow Mama, and I knew she would take it. But I was trying to get it in print on hard copy. And Yellow Mama doesn't do that; it's all
Yeah.
electronic. But I wanted it out there, so I knew she'd take it. She's been a real supporter of my stuff, and she really liked it. And um, if I get a chance, I'll have to look at what their criteria are. Um, I would like to see that again. But I've written a lot of stuff about tragedy. Some stuff I've made up. You know, um, I'll show you a couple things here.
Yeah.
See that?
Oh, yeah.
See that?
Right.
All I need is your mailing address.
Oh, okay. I'll provide that
And one of
on
these is
Messenger. Yeah.
my pediophobia.
Oh my
Here,
gosh. Oh my gosh.
and the other is what did I call it? Um, oh no, I can't. Oh, the other one is called "And I Weep for Thee."
Oh my
And,
God. I would be
and
so amazing if you could send me those because I love what Juliet does. I mean, I love her productions.
well, this "And I Weep for Thee." Now that was I mentioned this guy's Scurf P publication. He also will publish chapbooks once in a while, and this is what this is. And every poem in this has a woman in it, in some respect. And some of the poems are true, some of them aren't true, some of them are based on truth. Um, but I think you'll see another layer of or another you know area that I tend to write about. But there are things that I think make Snethen poem a Snethen poem. So there's probably a lot of alliteration and that kind of stuff in them.
Yeah.
But they're all ready to go. You just gotta give me your address and I'll
Okay.
send it.
I will certainly, I'd be so thrilled. I will send that to you and on email. And did I show you cauldrons? I think I did, right? Cauldrons? What, K.R.
No,
Morrison?
no, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm getting a weird sense of deja vu. Was I talking to myself? Oh my gosh. I swear that I showed somebody this. Oh my God.
I'll
But
probably rewatch this. I'll probably watch this show and I probably saw it, but I don't
well,
remember.
I know it was because I did a live stream where I just maybe I'm mentally insane, but I'll do these live streams I'm just with I'm an only child, so I'm used to sort of having to use my own resources.
Well, and I watched a stream the other
Yeah,
evening. I don't know, it might have been in there. I don't know.
yeah. This is anyway, I'm gonna have here tomorrow on I mean not tomorrow, but on Friday, and with along with Catfish and Mitzi Soreto, and well, it'll be like you're in South Dakota, so that's what is that Central Time or is that
Well, I'm in Mountain Time where I'm
Mountain
at.
Time?
My
So
ranch is at Central Time. So I grew up in Central Time, but I'm teaching in Mountain Time.
okay, I have dyscalculia, so I can't track that, but this is so we won't be able to, but so this is she's a poet and drummer who teaches English literature and creative writing to inner city youth in San Francisco. In 1997, she fell in love with San Francisco, where she completed her BA, and this is K.R.R. Morrison, where she completed her BA in philosophy from USF, a portion of which she earned at Oxford University for medieval philosophy and Gothic art and architecture, which I think is incredibly cool. And
Yeah.
she earned a teaching credential, another BA in English literature, and minored in creative writing from Cal State Long Beach. I attended that. Um, and longing to return to the only place that ever felt like home, she went back to San Francisco, where she's been teaching at Galileo High School for 17 years. And so I think it's neat that she and you are both educators of the same, at the same level of, high school students. And this is a picture of her, right? And it's a beautiful, beautiful person. And so she wrote for Alex made poetry light the way. Much moon love, Tara Morrison. And that, you know, and this is the cover. And do you know the a guy named William Taylor Jr.? Does that
I don't think I do.
He's this San Francisco-based poet and painter, and he did one of the really interesting things about the junk merchants is as I try to do experiments that are similar to what the Beats were doing. And one of the sort of experiments was to do a kind of a cut up essay where he wrote. I commissioned him to write an essay about painting a painting of William Burroughs, and then he submitted a rough draft to me, and then I gave him notes on it, and he took it, and then he incorporated the fact that I had given him notes on it into the essay itself. So it's a kind of a meta essay and a cut up essay at the same time. And and I think it's neat that we have voices like yours. We have Catfish, we have mine. Catfish and I are writing a story. Well, he's doing a deep dive into Burroughs, and it's called Drugs, Alien Cowboy Prairie Dog,
Okay.
because his concept was it's something to do with Frida Kahlo and something to do with because well, it's one of the things. Okay, so with Catfish, he reminds me a lot of Mark Twain, where it starts out where you think, okay, you're located on solid ground here, and then he wades out into the deep water and you're not even aware by the time that you're through with one of his stories, you realize that you've been hoodwinked and the catfish has reeled you in, right? So, um, anyway, so I really that was all that goes to say is I love to have artwork. I mean, I like to have original artwork. I like to have signed copies of stuff because to me it's a holy thing. You know, it's a holy thing. I like to have postcards and I would love to send you postcards. I would like to send you artwork that I have done. I like to send people art. And that's one of the things that I love about Juliet is that she doesn't just, send her chapbooks to the Amazon Create Space. She hand crafts them, right? So she interlaces
Oh yeah,
them
that's really cool.
textures.
Say, can I read one more poem for you?
Oh, be my guest, which we are. Yes.
Okay. It's called Eating Catfish on the Bank of Sankuru River for Stephen C. Catfish McDaris.
Yay!
A cannibal sat on the bank of the Sankuru River eating catfish. He carbon copied me from his smartphone an email message all the way to South Dakota with a graphic photo of his repast. I really don't know why he did this. Carbon copy me with a photo of his fine dining, but I sure am glad he did. It looked delicious. Perhaps next time the cannibal will invite me to be his guest as he dines upon the banks of the Sankuru River. I'd like to eat some catfish too.
Damn. Oh, that's amazing. Wow, yeah. Wow.
That's my catfish, Paul.
That's a good poem. Okay, my friend. Well, we will catch up on email and message, and I will send you my address, and I I'm getting some copies of the hardcover of my book, The Flowers of Doom. So when I get those, for some reason, Amazon has just been holding on to those, and I could send you some. We can trade. I mean, I can send you some of my um I don't know. I've got here I could send you a copy of of the um anthem.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Okay. Yeah, because if you're a fan, because I have two copies of it, so I got two copies, so I can send you one of them, and then I'll send you like a chat book or something. Um, I'll send you like one of these. This is I did with my friend Suraf Sarkar in was it see he's in India, Kuch Bihar, India. So I could send you one of these, and it's just a little chap, and so the little package there. So hope you like them, and yeah, we'll just keep talking about whenever we get a chance. I know that Juliet doesn't like to move on to another poem until we've finished up working on one poem, but I could send you just a first couple of stanzas of something, and then maybe you could,
Well, that's possible, but I
yeah,
also think there's a couple others out there that I haven't really gotten to. But if you want to
yeah.
send me something fresh, that's fine.
Okay, okay, cool.
I it's just and if it hits me right, I'll do something with it right away. But otherwise, I got these other projects I'm trying to get
Yeah,
finished up here.
there's no urgency at all.
but I do want to continue with the collaborative effort between the three of us.
Yeah, me
And I'm
too.
glad that we've got one under, that we
Yeah,
all three worked on. And I'm glad that you and I have a couple, that we've finished. And I've
yeah,
finished several with Juliet. And I think that's really amazing. So,
yeah, me too. And
and
now that
and also all these things you've been putting on your things about describing me as a poet,
yeah.
I'm starting to I'm starting to believe maybe I am a poet.
Well, why not?
Well, how do you know you're a poet?
Well,
I don't think I don't think self-proclamation makes you a poet.
well, unless you're Walt Whitman, he wrote his own reviews, and I just well, so I have a tendency to be my own worst critic and a nightmare critic from hell. But the fact that my work is institutionalized at Harvard University means so much more than if I were to get an award. It means more than just success because I
Yeah,
certainly
well,
have made no money.
sure. No, I think that's an amazing thing to have. And I know Catfish and stuff is um someplace archived in
Marquette University, along with
yeah.
with Lord of the Rings, right?
So I mean that's cool.
Yeah,
I don't know that my stuff will ever reach that status, but
you never know. You never know. I mean, it's certainly for me, and I am a connoisseur. I would not be working with you if I wasn't a fan. Um, that your stuff is state of the art. It's as good as Emily Frank. It's as good as Mark Olmsted. It is when the emotion hits you first, that's how I recognize a great poem. The emotion hits you first. I never when you were reading your poems do I think, oh man, if he'd only used, yeah, it's not quite the right, but I see what he's doing, what he's trying to do, because I'm a writing teacher, as you are. And so when I hear, but when it hits me directly and I don't, and it doesn't go through it bypasses the filter, and I think, well, that's just makes me think of my dog Trolley, or that makes me think of a dear friend who's no longer with me, who's haunting me, Jordan Gallagher. And I think, well, that's a beautiful thing because somebody else's personal experience of loss and grief speaks to my experience and enlarges it. So now I'm not, my experience of loss and grief is not just personal. And then we create a middle space, which is it's both our voices and not our voices. And I think this is one of the things that literature on a human level can do is that it can expand our hearts. We can because we can join our experience with somebody else's experience.
I,
And then,
I've I've read that out loud. I'm
yeah,
reading Perfect Stranger will
yeah,
walk up and hug me
yeah,
because they feel it,
yeah,
and it's probably they probably have their own dog story or whatever, you know.
yeah. I really miss my dog. Well, actually, I don't know what happened to him, but it's not a story for now. But that soulful bond with the dog, it's just because my dog would pet me when I was down, it's this little paw, his little
Uh
paw,
huh.
and it'd go like that. And it's just a beautiful and noble animal. I just, And it goes so deep with an animal.
Well,
And it's
I
a
have
beautiful, beautiful thing.
I have so many experiences with dogs, and a lot of them are very traumatic.
Yeah.
And I have a collection of dog poems, but people don't like to publish something that's just full of sadness.
Well, that is exactly what I'm going to be doing this year. And well, it's good and bad. The bad, I guess the downside is that very few people will buy my books. The upside is that people who do buy my books, well, sometimes people will steal my books, which is the ultimate compliment. Well, people will steal my books, and they'll say the Doom hippies, for example. I had a friend in England who was a huge fan of mine, and his mate came over, and it was like next thing you know, his copy of the Doom hippies was gone. And this guy just blatantly filched it. And then he said, "Okay, I have to buy another copy." We'll say, you're doing something right when people like people steal food, right? Because they have to eat.
Right.
Well, if people steal your book, that means,
Because they want literary sustenance. That's quite a something.
right? It's something. It's nourishment, man. And it's like, and that's the same book that's in Harvard University in their flagship library, which is called the Widener Library. I mean, it's one of the most prestigious research lib institutions in the world, like next to the Library of Congress. And so it hasn't really hit me yet because I'm still young and I'm still writing. I'm still very much viable and I write new stuff every day. So the things that I wrote back in 2015, um, I would hope that tomorrow I would write things that make them look like ginger beer. I just I want to
Now,
keep
hold
writing.
on, hold on. Um, that's like my favorite thing to drink.
Oh, 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 oh. Well, actually,
I
that's
love ginger beer.
a Hunter S. Thompson quote. I mean, so
Oh, is it okay?
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm a huge Hunter S. Thompson fan. I just can't get enough of him. Okay, so I think this is we've been on here for believe it or not, we've been at 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
So,
it's
um,
hard to shut me up.
oh yeah, well, you're a delightful guest. I hope to have you back on the show, and I would really like to have you and Juliet and Catfish.
Well, that'd be exciting, and
Yeah,
I like this type of thing. I hope you get more than one view. I
yeah. Well, I had, interestingly
don't
enough,
know who's going to watch 3.5 hours of it, but maybe.
well, yeah. I mean, see, it's quality stuff. If I have, if I say so myself. But just like the books are quality stuff, it doesn't really matter if, like, of course I want to make some money, but the main thing is that the soulful connections with human beings who are who are writing things that move me and make me feel better about myself, about life, about, you know, like music is sustenance. Music is sustenance, and the arts are sustenance for me. So I really also, because I have a brain injury, and every day I look for reasons to stick around. So having something to do, basically, if I could write something new, and
Uh,
yeah,
I'm sure that's helpful in many ways. Yeah.
yeah, I and so I look forward to, oh, Daniel Snethen sent me something new, or I finished a poem with Nolcha Fox or Barbara Harris Leonard. Do you know her?
I don't.
Okay, so that's another poetry market that'll Masticadoras USA, which I can turn you on to.
Oh
And
yeah, that's we got our
oh yeah, exactly. Um,
Pangea exploded in my head. Is that in
yeah,
now?
yes, yeah, that was her. So that's a very, very good market. Also, I've got some markets in places like Nepal and France. So and to be honest, Will, with the brain injury, sometimes it's kind of like my brain's turning into soup. So it's kind of hard to keep track of stuff. But I when I click on my email and I get like something new, think, well, okay, I have people all over the world, people in Nepal, people in Pakistan, fellow writers in Pakistan, people in Greece, people in France, people in Italy, people in everywhere, in England, in Scotland, in all over the United States, and they're the best. They're the best in the world. The best in the world, meaning the best, not just the best, but culturally important, right? People who are culturally significant and who are pioneers in their own right, like David J. Haskins, created Bauhaus and wrote one of the most famous songs in the history of music, Bela Lugosi's Dead. You know, I have an original poem from him. I mean, that's profound to me, right? I mean, and this book is important. It's more than just another anthology. It wouldn't matter if three people bought it. The important thing is that it's historically significant, and that is to have, like, when I was growing up, my biggest ambition, my biggest thrill that I dreamed about reading Sherlock Holmes and Jules Verne and yes, H.G. Wells and War of the Worlds. I really love that book, War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, and my number one goal was to be a writer. I wanted to be a published writer. I just didn't want to be a published writer. I wanted to be a famous writer. I wanted to have I wanted and as I got older, I thought, I really want to have famous people say nice things about me. Right? So I achieved that goal. Now, how many people can say that they did everything that they wanted? I mean, that they did, like I got to teach college and I got to work for New Line Cinema and I got to hang out with some rock stars like Lemmy Kilmister and so, and I even spent a night in the um, safe Beverly Hills safe house of a professional hitman, which was a really weird experience, and a lot of stuff that seemed normal to me in living in LA, where this kind of thing was just sort of you'd be hanging out the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and all of a sudden you'd wind up in a caravan going to the safe house of a professional hitman. And this is kind of stuff that you would see in the movies. And it's real, It's the guy showing me his guns, and he was saying, yes, and you are a very intelligent professor. You would make a good assassin. I'm like, seriously? Well, I'm the opposite of that. I don't want to, harm anybody, but I wouldn't I wouldn't pass up that experience for the world. I would never turn that down because Hemingway said, like, write what you know. Well, when you have that kind of experience, you don't need to have to relive that experience over and over again, right? You just need to have that kind of experience once and you turn it into something. Anyway, I'm I'm sort of boring myself by going on and on. So I'll wrap this up. It's been truly a truly true pleasure doing this show with you, and I hope to have you back on along with Kat. I know that Kat would want to be on the show with you, and we could have a and Juliet Cook, and we could approach her about being on the show with
Yeah,
us.
I'm all in favor of it. I've enjoyed it. I thought of about 20 times as much material that I held back because this is 3.5 hours long.
Yeah, yeah, it's 3.5 hours long, but it's all substantive. So, okay, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
It
Okay,
means a lot to me. It truly does.
me too. All right. Good night. Take care.
Yeah. Okay. Goodbye.